Peace and blessing, family. This is your brother Asarimhotep with the Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture, as well as the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Today is Friday, the 13th of August. And this is an open discussion, question and answer show. So, whatever is on your mind, whatever questions that you have that I or if someone else comes on the panel, they can answer. We'll try our best. And, just keeping the community dialogue going. So, all that and more when we return in just a moment. Peace, and blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining the MBONGI, the community place where we share vital information on all aspects of life. Want to thank each and every one of you who are catching the live, and then, of course, those of you who are catching the archive of this program. And as mentioned earlier, today is an open show, so I will be sharing the link in just a moment for those who want to come on and ask a question or just be on a panel, or you can ask your questions via the chat room. And so for those on the Asar Imhotep Facebook page, you can type your questions in the chat if you don't want to join the program. There on the Harold Johnson page, for some reason, when someone chats there, it doesn't come up here. So I won't necessarily be able to see it. So if you can go to my Facebook page, the Asar Imhotep page, or you can just join the YouTube page. If you just want to chat your question and comment, then you will be able to do so there. So let me shout out those of you who have made themselves known in the chat room. Peace and blessings to Harold Richardson, Sister Tamika One, Sister Anusha, Brother Sunjata Atta, Kakra or Kakra in Zambi, Sister Safa, Kimoyo West Africa Spirit, Brother Omar Reed, Jagad Davis, Infinite Minds, and Jaded Unk, peace, brother. Pure Black in the building. And if I missed anyone, I do apologize. And I'll shout out more as they make themselves known in the chat. Peace to Teti Ursa Ma'at Ras Neferu. And I am going to first do a couple of announcements. Peace to Uwa Abantum, number 2. Thank you for joining. But just a few announcements before we get started. And so first and foremost, on the 17th of August at the 19th hour, what is that, 7 p.m.? I don't know. It just depends on what time you are around the world, but just know that Brazilian time at the 19th hour, you have to calculate that on your own for your own time zone. I will be, I don't know what actual time I'll be presenting, but I will be presenting at this online conference. Is going to be in Portuguese primarily. My presentation will be translated but it is the future is ancestral, and I'm just translating from the Portuguese. In search of the relationship between Kemet and Congo and its impact on the diaspora or with the diaspora, something to that nature, roughly translating. Those who speak Portuguese could better translate it, but that's what I got. So, a slew of dynamic speakers, Dr. Katuskia Ribeiro, Lepi Hoji Kala, and Gabriel Fortes will be speaking. And this is just the version of my part of the presentation. My presentation is on Kemet and Congo, two traditions from a common ancestor. So I will be sharing the link for those who want to watch that live on Tuesday, the 17th of August. And I hope y'all were able to catch the conversation that I had with Baba Oluwo Obafemi Fayemi out of Houston, Texas, who was a Babalawo in the Yoruba Isheshe tradition. And we had a good conversation. So he's someone I've known for over 20 years. And, seen him grow in terms of, becoming a Babalawo and going around the world, promoting the Isheshe, or commonly the Ifa tradition, of the Yoruba people. And so y'all can check that out. It's on the YouTube channel, and y'all can visit his website at Obafemi Fayemi. It's just Obafemi, my bad. Obafemi.org. So make sure y'all check that out. And if I haven't mentioned before, I'm mentioning it again, that the text Muntu Wan Zambi, this book right here that I'm holding in my hand, which you can see on the screen, a portrait of human as God's special creation from African creation stories, religious beliefs, and cultural practices by Dr. Shilima Lima Mukinge. The first text from Madu and Della Press, which is my publishing company, and subtitled From African Creation Stories, Religious Beliefs, and Cultural Practices. So it is now out for pre-order. You can visit the site maduindelapress.com and put in your order. It will be released on the 24th of this month. And so, those in the United States, I would encourage you to pre-order here at maduindelapress.com. But if you're in Europe or you are in Africa, or even like in South America, and you're interested in this text, I would encourage you to go to amazon.co.uk or whatever is, the convenient Amazon for you, and order from there, because the shipping will be cheaper with them than if I was to ship it from my space to where you're at. So again, Muntu Wan Zambi, you can pre-order the text and it will be delivered to your door with all the fan favor, and we'll be getting the author on the channel again soon for a live. So we'll go into the details of this magnificent text that I've had the privilege of editing and putting the text together for the book. So it looks good, smells good, and it got a hell of a lot of good content about the Luba language and culture, and its comparisons with other African traditions, including the Dogon, including the Yoruba, including the Akan, including the Egyptian, including the Amazulu, and a host of other groups, the Igbos, the Mande, the Fulani, Bambara. You'll learn a lot, and so it will have a lot of resources in terms of citations, so that you can further your studies and learn about what is in this text in a fuller context. So Dr. Shanima Mukinge is a native uh, Muluba uh, of the Baluba people of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so, again, I am excited to have been a part of this journey. So we are finally here after a year going back and forth with the book and editing and things of that nature. So again, Muntu Wan Zombie, you can get it here at this link, maduindelapress.com. And I will be sharing some other texts because I've already translated and published it, but we're going to republish it under Madu Indela from another text that I translated from French into English for Dr. Kalamba, also out of the Democratic Republic of Congo and also of the Baluba people on African concept of prayer. So y'all be on the lookout for that. And also from Madu Indela Press, that is coming in October, is this text here, Maweja, Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, an ancient Egyptian Ak, an exploratory etymological study. So this will be the first text, be published by Madu Indela Press, but it'll be under the imprint of the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. So, that will be released in October, right around the time of the Sheikh Anta Diop conference, which I think is on the 16th of October. So y'all be on the lookout for that. And speaking of Egyptology, as y'all know, I am putting together a documentary film called Chiena Intu. And, looking for sponsors and people to help support, trying to get to Egypt in February to begin shooting for the documentary film. So y'all will get more details on how y'all can be a part of that process in helping us put this film together. So the aim is to go to Egypt first, and then in the Congo, and then to South Africa to complete the first film. So the second film aims to hit Yoruba land or Nigeria, and then to go to Ghana and Senegal, West Africa, so we can go further west. And lastly, if we do a part 3, I want to go into East Africa. So, we got to start off with the first one and make sure that one is a success. So Chiena Intu will be the film, and we're planning on going to Egypt in February to begin shooting. And so let me see here. Peace of Dr. Ma'at in the building. Make sure y'all check out her channel on YouTube. I don't know what the exact link is, but I'm pretty sure if you type in Dr. Ma'at, you will find her on YouTube and her many interviews and book club readings and the like. So shout out to Dr. Ma'at in the building. Peace to Brother Robert Rand. Thank you for joining us today. And all the way in NYC, doing the thing. Peace to I Am King Kosa. Peace, peace. Peace, brother. I know I shouted you out earlier, but you're out there in Jacksonville. Is that Jacksonville, Florida? Because if that's Jacksonville, Florida, that's the place of my birth. And so it is awesome. So there's definitely some good energy there for me to have been born there and blessed the universe with my presence in the form of Brother Asarimhotep. Peace to Imperial Nubia. Thank you for joining. Peace to Robert Conley, thank you for joining the conversation. And so let me see if I got any more announcements. Of course, you can go to the link in the description for the spread shirt if you want to support by finding a Kimoyo t-shirt and a whole bunch of shirts that have been designed. Here's the Bai and Kole variant. This is the name, suggested for African Americans, and that's our totem. And we'll have more explanation. Well, I've already done a show on that concept, so y'all can, see that online. And upcoming t-shirts, it won't be on Spreadshirt. You will only be able to get these on asarimhotep.com. That is Black is Not a Race, it's a Vibe. And so I have my own brand called Rude Boy Juju. And then for those of you into mathematics, let's see if you can get what this shirt is saying. That will be, available on the website as well in a variety of colors. So just be on the lookout for that. So I think I've done all my general announcements. So again, this is an open show. So if you have any questions, y'all want to make any comments, y'all got a beef with something I've said on the internet streets, on these internet streets, this is your time to voice your opinion. So I am going to, nope, I don't need that. I need the link. Here we go. And I'll put it in the chat to join the show. Click on this link. And booyah. There we go. So on the asarimhotep Facebook page, it is on there, as well as the YouTube chat. So so while y'all, and I know there's going to be a slight delay, so while y'all are gathering y'all thoughts and seeing if y'all want to join the show, I'm going to need each and every one of you to That is right. I need y'all to hit those likes. And if you are new to the program, I need you to subscribe. We are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers so we can be very disrespectful with all this Black African power on these YouTube streets. So hit the like, subscribe, and make sure that you hit the bell so that when I have these powerful interviews and conversations and presentations, that you are the first to know what is going down. So again, the link is in the chat. And if I am not mistaken, let me see. See, I can't do it from here. So let me go to YouTube so I can pin the link in the chat at the top. So let me do that. Let me go up and pin so I don't have to put it in there multiple times. So boom, it should be pinned at the top, the link to join the program for those of you on Facebook who want to join the program. So, all right, I see we got one person in the chat. Excuse me, in the we got Lionel in the building. Peace and welcome back.
Hey, what's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How art thou?
I'm straight, man. Hey, I was, sometimes I spend my time on pseudo killers, man. And yo, man, you made them brothers mad about saying that atheism was for white people, bro. Because I was trying to defend you on that joint too. I was like, look, y'all not getting what Brother Asar is saying. What he's saying is culturally it's impossible for African people to be atheists, and you proved it.
Yeah.
Like with your whole presentation, man. That the way you did your presentation, it straight up reminded me of the cultural unity of Black Africa by shaking a deal. And they was like, man, but we all human. See, you can't just say that. And then I'm like, okay, I know what them brothers doing. They trying to ask for stuff that they can't really prove. They're just going by that we human stuff. And I'm like, start hitting you with the evidence. Like,
Yeah. It's yeah, I haven't kept up with all the discussions on the pseudo killers. Sometimes when I'm at work, I'll pop in for a second and then pop out because I really can't listen while at work because of the nature of what I do. But you know this, and the thing is, the conversation wasn't aimed at anyone on pseudo killers or brother Unc or nothing to that nature. It had nothing to do with them. It was it was inspired by a conversation that was happening on Sonetta's channel with a sister who came on speaking about atheism, and I made a comment in the comment section, and then a whole bunch of people, in opposition came on my comment, voicing their opinions. So I said, okay, what I'm going to do is do a show on that Friday, and we can hash it out there, and I'll demonstrate for you why it is impossible for you from an African context, a general African context, to be an atheist. That this only makes sense within the paradigm, for the most part, of European peoples, European cultures, and the Abrahamic traditions more specifically. And so, it's an issue of logic, and of course, that's a discipline, and they're not a part of that discipline, so they don't know what the details in argumentation spaces of how to do those types of have those types of discussions. And we're not talking about the human ability to believe and all this other kind of stuff.
yeah, they was trying to over philosophicalize that, man. I'm like, y'all can't prove none of the stuff that y'all talking about. They just human. That means that they ain't got nothing else to say. Like when they just say we all human, it's like, okay, where your evidence at, man? He hit y'all with primary sources.
Yeah. Yes, and that's one of the things I made sure it's that I cited enough where you couldn't say that what I was saying was just an isolated instance. You can't say that I'm cherry picking one or two from across the continent and then saying that this is a general African trend. And that is definitely not the case. And so you will find this all across Africa. And I didn't even exhaust the resources that I have at my disposal. And they're lucky I'm not back home in Philly with the rest of my books. So I could have just been pulling off the shelf, left and right, and just citing like, where do you want to go? And so, this is I've been studying this seriously for over 20 years. And so I've accumulated a lot of information, and I can spot trends in African culture. And what as a scientist, I look for patterns, I look for trends, and then I look for the reasons why these are trending. And that's why I use the different tools that I use of historiography, of linguistics, of archaeology, yada yada yada, to help explain the trends, the patterns that I'm seeing in the materials and the living traditions in which I am observing. So,
Cause I could tell by like just like looking at your video that you were like a legitimate scholar, like because like as I said, like when I first was on here, I'm studying to be like a historian right now in college, man. And one thing I be finding out, the more and more I study like Europeans, Africans, Asians, right? I always find out, man, like we are all the same because we're human, but
yeah,
there's a lot of cultural differences that need to be addressed too. Like if you study like African warfare, you can correct me if I'm wrong because you've been in the game longer. But I would read like when Africans would like fight each other, right? Especially like tribal nations, period. like only like maybe a few people would get killed. Like if the casualty was high as 12, that was a huge battle because tribal nations for a long time, not forever, but for a long time really didn't have a standing army up until like much, much later. Like,
Mm.
would you agree with me on that or
I think the situation is diverse. And so one of the things that you're going to have to recognize in your studies is the notion that um of course, the concept of an African is a modern thing. So we have to be very careful when we say the word African and then try to broadly apply it to peoples across the continent. So when I say it, I'm strictly speaking from a historical standpoint in terms of the people who were born, evolved, and developed their culture indigenously on the continent of Africa as given by the modern borders, right? And so I set the modern borders as my demarcations, my limitations, and then I'm looking for the trends and differences in that general area. And so what I don't try to do is just because they exist and have emerged within this arbitrary boundary that somehow makes them united as one. And so, as a scholar, you're going to have to be able to differentiate and make that known in your studies. And so uh there are various different, how should I say, there are different modes of production in Africa. So when you're looking at certain folks who are just small, subsistence farming communities versus those who are hunter gatherers versus those who, built large, urban centers
like
versus,
Timbuktu?
I'm sorry.
Like Timbuktu was starting to become like a massive city state. Like
Yeah,
I'm
because of their participation in trade in the trans-Saharan trade, as far as Timbuktu is concerned. The versus those who are nomadic pastoralists,
like
you
the
know,
Tariq.
like the Fulani, like the Bora Bora, which is kind of the same people. Some of the Berbers, the original Berbers, like you have to keep all of that in mind when you're talking about African people. So for some, like for a Khoi group, if they go to war and lose, like 6 or 7 people because they exist in small bands, that's a lot. So they're, if they do go to war, that small number is trending. But if you're talking about like the Benin Empire or the Oyo Empire in Benin, in Yoruba, in modern Yoruba, Nigeria, respectively, then that's a different. When we talk about ancient Egypt, they had, thousands of troops at any given time. So it was different. So we always have to name names. So we people, certain people who do statistics like to speak in general, you can't do that as a historian, as a scientist. You have to name names, and you have to be specific, because certain trends that may exist in one group may not be relevant to another group. And that's going back to the initial part of the conversation. That's what they're failing to realize, uh, these black atheists in general, is that what applies here amongst the Abrahamic traditions may not apply over here, for example, among the Dogon or the
Right.
Dagara people, because the same phenomena may be conceptualized differently over here. And if you're going to have a discussion about this phenomena, you have to do it within the context that is relevant to that culture and not impose Judeo-Christian, Islamic, paradigms on Dagara, on Zulu, on Congo people, etc. So this is what we have to keep in mind. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I try to explain that to like my friends and stuff. Like, well, they tend not to believe me when when I tell them stuff like, you know, you can't, like, I got friends of mine who say stuff like, well, when you look at Judaism and Christianity and Islam of African societies, that made, that turned African societies patriarchal. And then I hit them with Ibn Battuta, and I'll be like, Ibn Battuta said the black folks are named after their mothers. I've never seen this custom anywhere except by the infidel, Malabar, India. And it was a whole different type of Islam my ancestors practiced. And when I hit them with that, they tend not to know what to say because people look at narratives like, as you said, imposing Judaism and Christianity, Islam, or European values on another people.
This is why Afrocentricity is vital for every African person who is doing research on African people, because it puts into perspective the limitations of scholarship. And at the core of Afrocentricity is this debate and argument about universalisms, and why you got to be careful about universalisms, because certain ideas and practices may not apply to other people, and you can't use this one paradigm and then try to use it to explain other people. You have to know the people who you're studying first and foremost, as truthfully as you can, in terms of understanding and explaining, what it is that they do from their own perspective. Their worldview, their history is priority. Then once you've gotten enough knowledge about them, then you got to do the same thing for another group of people. And then once you've done that, then you can look for trends. Okay, what is similar? Well, they do the same thing here and have the same kind of da. So then you can start clustering and grouping people based upon, an extensive knowledge of a group of people. But you can't just take surface information and then just lump everyone together. You can't do that. So that's why it was important for me to cite the text, and to cite primarily from the Africans themselves. So outside of the Dogon text, from Marcel and Griot, every other text was written by an African who grew up and was initiated into their own traditions. And even with the Griot text, they were initiated into the Dogon tradition, which is why when they died, they got a king's funeral because of all of what they've done for the Dogon at that time. So these are primary texts from the African people themselves about their own culture. So now when I'm making the argument, you can't say that I'm, bending the facts or nothing to this nature. The text, the page number, I gave it to you. It's easily accessible, and I tried to stay in English. So this doesn't even include all the French speaking texts, those texts that are in Spanish, or those that are just written in the native languages, about the people. So this is the thing that we just got to keep in mind when we're doing this type of scholarship. But I want to address something in the chat first, because I paused it, so I haven't seen what's at the bottom of the chat. But Robert Rand asks, did anyone see Dr. Oyibo on Salnetter yesterday?
I did.
And I have a love-hate relationship with Dr. Ebo, because he's clearly a brilliant mind. And I don't say this because of what I've heard.
Mm.
What I've heard from him turns me off from him. But reading his text, I have his text on Gaga. I got the highlights book. I don't have the thick book. So he has 2 books on Gaga. It's a thicker book with more details, and then he has a thinner one, the highlights of Gaga. And as a mathematician, as a computer scientist, I can tell he knows his shit when it comes to this. So, but for some reason, when he starts talking, he's somewhere else. And
yeah, that God problem. I was trying to get into it because I heard him years ago on YouTube, and I'm like, I'm trying to get what this brother's saying here, but and then he got like some Nobel Peace Prizes, so
no,
you
he
know I'm
didn't.
gonna get him to.
That's just, no, he didn't. And it's and the guy, and what's interesting is I've been trying to interview him for years, but I'm someone who can ask some critical questions, so he won't come on my show. You get what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
and because I just want him to speak about the details of the formulas and what that means. But the problem is, every single time that you have a conversation with him, or I forgot the other guy, they want to start going off in talking about, well, this person supports this, and this is going to really, where I'm like, I get it, but I want to get back to the actual details. That's what I want to discuss. I want to discuss the science of this, of what you're trying to say. And so, but you can never get there. Like, I remember someone gave me his number, and I called,
Uh-oh.
and so Gabriel Oyibo,
It
first of
went
all,
dead.
his voice is distinctive. Like, I even get this when I call people that I know, and then I be trying to change my voice, and they be like, I know it's you, because you have a distinctive voice. Like, Gabriel Yibo has a distinctive voice. So when I call, he tries to act like he's not him. Like, I know it's you. I can hear you. Like, like your tonations, everything is the same. So he's trying to act like he's not him, and to call back and or whatnot to set up. And I'm just like, I can't. It's just over the years, I'm like, no, this, and so this is why, like,
Dr. Reggie tried to.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Dr. Reggie tried to ask us some questions yesterday, like you didn't prove God, like you just did an equation or something like that, and everybody was getting on him saying his pineal gland was calcified. They was getting him in the chat.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but yeah, because when he was on again, I was at work, so I can only get a little bit of the conversation. But I've heard him so many times over the years, and so you have to you have to wonder why someone of that caliber, with that type of mind, is only on like a sonnetter. Like, why isn't he at these scientific conferences having these conversations? And it's only one person that I know that has reviewed his text, and that is a Nigerian mathematician. Uh, and so ultimately, his conclusion was, mathematically it's sound, but we would still have to wait for experimental evidence to 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 validate the claims, saying, of Gaggett. And so people got to understand, like, even when you read the text in terms of the Gaggett, it really is, he uses the word God, but it's really just, you can substitute it with just the all. It's basically mathematically reinforces what all of that I talked about in the previous conversation concerning God being existence itself. So that's ultimately what he's saying, and that the change in God is zero, meaning that it's an infinite flux. So there's no inputs, there's no outputs of it. The change in God is zero in terms of its magnanimity, and component parts, right? So like you really got to understand the text, but you won't get there unless you find people who have actually read it and can at least to a certain extent understand the math. Because when you get the text, it's just pure math. So it's not like, you know, one of my texts where it's a, you know, I'm giving some linguistic, philosophic stuff. I'm citing some.
It's just math.
It's just math. And so if you don't understand math, you can't do calculus and basic algebra, you know, you're going to be stuck. And then, of course, on top of that, you're going to have to know physics. And so to know what these formulas are. So it's, you know, there's so much potential for a richer conversation with him. But because we got to go through all this BS and psychological issues, which won't allow him to just address the issue at hand, we can't get nowhere. So that's why I have a love-hate relationship. Like I would be able to look at it in his text and be like, no, this is some pseudo. It's not pseudo. Like it's some serious stuff. So, you know, so anybody, you know, who hasn't read the text, if you can get it, because now, you know, the price is
like
astronomical. Yeah, like it's ridiculous.
Because Sai and the pod, they was listening to him yesterday, and it was like they was kind of like, I saw the whole thing. They was kind of looking at it like, I'm trying to digest this joint, man. This going over my head.
Yeah, once you start talking about Gaggett, and I think when I was listening, he's talking about, you know, we rename Africa Gaggets, something like Gaggetstan. I don't know what it is that he used, but it was something crazy. And like, this will save the world, this formula, you know, now the African is the black man, is the
it's a God-given thing, and we got to get out that Jim Crow mindset. He kept bringing me back in when he kept on bringing back Jim Crow. I'm like, oh, okay.
And people don't even know what the grand unified field theorem is. And so the problem with the God Almighty grand unified field theory is that the reason why they're looking for that in the first place is because, and this is a physics metaphorical equivalent to the issue that we're having here with the God and atheism concept. So, as I argue, you can be an atheist in relationship to the Abrahamic traditions, for example, because within that tradition, they argue that God is an entity unto itself that is separate from the existence and creation as we know it, right? And that he's from a distance doing things and interacting with the phenomena, right? Whereas in the general African context, God is the very existence itself. And so that forces you to conceptualize two different things. So it's an incompatibility with trying to reconcile those two. So it's the same thing in physics. In physics, the Albert Einsteinian general and special relativities, for the most part, have to deal with gravity and the role of gravity in terms of the forces. Well, the general theory of relativity argues that gravity is not even a force. And so when you're looking at, you know, that it's basically the effect of the mass warping space-time, right? And so when you get to the quantum level and you're dealing with particles that have masses, you know, how do you calculate and reconcile gravity for those high speeds and for those small masses? And so general relativity and everything works well in the phenomenal world with large masses. But when you get to the quantum level, the Einstein's calculations break down. And so as a result of that, That's why they're looking for a grand unified theorem that explains the relationship between all the interactions, the small and weak nuclear force, the gravity, and the electromagnetic force, and any other unknown forces that we may know of, to kind of bring together. I'm sorry?
But how can you prove God through a math problem? Through like a math problem like that? I mean,
Well,
we can't even.
If you understand God from the phenomena as Africans understand it, so this is why you got to read the book, because it's not what people think when he talks about God Almighty, And so he even states it in the text that he's looking at God fundamentally as a wave function, in the same way that the ancient Egyptians described the Nun as this infinite sea of waves from which emerged, like this, what I'm saying? So like, this is why I'm saying, like, everybody hasn't read the text, so like they're confused. And like, if you read the text, you get a deeper understanding of what he's talking about. But since you can't get anybody who's actually read the text to have a conversation with him, these details don't come out.
Yeah.
And so that's
just talking. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
He was just talking all through the video, and they was just listening to him, like nodding their heads, like, "You being deep, like this, like okay."
And Kimoyo West says that he still couldn't prove God outside of existence. Are you talking about Gabriel Oyibo? Because Gabriel Oyibo is talking about God is existence. That's what he's saying. So he's not saying it and understand this. He's not trying to prove God. What he's saying is that what the calculations, inform me is that, everything can be explained here. But the ancients would have called this God. And so, he's not trying to prove, he didn't set out to try to prove God. We have to read the text. And so, let me see. Siseko Petro says, I think we share a mutual problem as Africans, and I think that is agency. Indeed. Let me say. Fitz says he knows the secrets to the cosmos, not even the universe, and it all reverts back to a God, not even one God, a mixture of a select few. I haven't seen the whole video, so I don't know all the details of what he said in his latest interview. So I'm not going to argue for or against this statement. But
his assistant was
the
on
text,
there for the longest.
I'm sorry?
His assistant was on there for the longest. He had
that's another thing. You gotta go through the assistant. And along, like, one of the conversations of me trying to get to Gabriel Oyibo was talking to that brother that you saw at the beginning of the program, like an hour. I'm like, I just need to talk to Gabriel Oyibo. Is Gabriel Oyibo available? I understand that you are his protege, that I understand that. I just need to talk to Gabriel Oyibo. Is he available? No, I had to sit through the whole, I couldn't even get a word in. He's talking about yes, and the black man is, now the top and the smartest, and the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm like, oh, it was a headache. I'm sorry.
That's what the African royal. That's what royalty used to do back in the day. You couldn't talk to the person you had to talk to. You had to talk to this.
I'm like, man, this is it's Nigeria. You notice I have very few people from Nigeria on my program, because for some reason in Nigeria they just can't get things right in terms, like, I can go anywhere. People from Ghana, South Africa, Congo, you speak to them and it is what it is. We agreed. No, Nigeria is always something, and I have stories of conversations with folks from, and of course this isn't everybody, but just a lot of, and then I'm just like, what is going on here in Nigeria that you just can't get straight answers, sometimes, and
they movies
it's,
like
it's
that too.
frustrating. I'm sorry.
They movies like that too, where it's just you can't get no straight answer from they movies either. They movies be like 12 hours long. Like what the? Like,
Yeah.
get to the point.
Niggas,
Oh Lord.
the guest says that Oyibo sounds like a sophisticated pseudo.
He didn't sound like that
I'm
to me.
I'm trying to tell you all that don't get his verbal conversation confused with the actual work. That I can't vouch. I cannot defend anything that comes out of his mouth. I can't do it. But I can vouch for that text though. It ain't pseudo.
That's how
And you're gonna have to have a background in mathematics and physics to understand it. And I understand it to a degree. I have enough background to be able to go through it and understand what is going on. And no, it's not pseudo. But what comes out of his mouth, hey, it is what it is.
He said it take you 2 weeks to learn what he talking about. He said that on the show.
I am King Costa says, please watch the video and do a review. I'm gonna start doing those. So you know how people do these
reaction
videos. Like I'm going to do start doing reaction videos of just various different things that I see on the net. So that should be entertaining in the near future. So be on the lookout for that. So I guess I'll do that. I'll let Gabriel Yibo be my first one. So so Sean is the Big Bang equivalent to the God in Africa. I don't know if Big Bang itself. Let's see.
What's Sean?
That's me. I know. I have an ex-girlfriend from Nigeria. Look, I remember the best scabbers in Nigeria. And I know a lot of Nigerians watching this would be like, quit hating on Nigeria, but like, look, my experiences with Nigerians is it's a love-hate relationship. It really is. I don't know what's going on over there in Nigeria, but
them first generations, they something else too, though. A little bit. They. Oh man, but I got one last question.
All righty.
Can you please do the Bible Bad Examples of Manhood Part 2? Because that was that video where you talked about how this dude, he like threw his concubine out the window and then she got like gang raped and then she died outside the door. And then, yeah, like, can you talk about like, what was that one dude in the Bible? He was one of the patriarchs that slept with his daughters.
Yeah, I forgot the exact name, but yeah, that's see a lot of, let me get that off the screen. A lot of the commentary coming from evangelicals about African-centered folks who reject the Bible, they think we reject the Bible simply because it has something to do with white people. And
it's the white man's religion, brother. It's the white man's religion.
And and that of course it comes from conversations from prominent voices in our community, and I get it. So they're just responding to the Cyrus Sutton-Setties and Khalid Muhammad's.
I ain't heard from Cyrus Sutton-Setty in a while. That man was big a couple years ago on Sonetta. Now he gone. I'm like, what is he doing now?
Hey, handling his biz, I hope. But yeah, when it comes to the Bible, people, we study the text, and so it is the internal conflicts of the text outside of the historical context. So that's easy, so you can go all day going back and forth with the text in terms of its historicity. So I approach it from a logic perspective, and so when let's just assume everything in the Bible is correct as it is written, whatever version comes about, King James,
Gideon,
International, whatever the text is. When you start digging in the stories, in the logic of the stories and what it promotes in terms of character and behavior and examples given by the prophets and the deities and things, this is where it becomes this is where it becomes problematic for this as a text that we are supposed to, study and emulate the people that are in the text and the examples that they give. So it would have been different. I understand if they gave the story and then came around and shown how this was wrong and how he was punished for doing this, and that how we shouldn't treat our women and our daughters in this fashion. But that's not the case. This was the norm. And so much so that it was repeated at least 2 other times with different folks in the text, because that was the culture, and this is what was accepted in the text. And so that is the issue that I was, trying to bring out, that it has nothing to, regardless of the white man and all that other kind of stuff, it's just a terrible text. It's a terrible example of manhood that we should emulate. And so, I may do a part 2 if I have time in the future, if I just want to start something on these internet streets.
Because that first one was classic, especially why you left the Hebrew Israelites, where you was talking about General Yohana, and he said, "Stop asking me questions because God has killed people for asking me questions." Remember?
Exactly. Yeah. I
That
mean,
was hilarious.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop laughing. Have you read the
Sherry
Amin
Jones asks, Asar, have you read the Amin Ra Illumination Volume 1 or 2? Author Amin Ma'at Ra, is it reliable as great scholarship? I haven't read Volume 2. I have Volume 1. And yes, it's good scholarship. I know the brother. And he's a good brother. So if you want to read the text, I highly recommend that you read the text. Again, I can't vouch for Volume 2 because I only have Volume 1. And so I'll get Volume 2 in the future. Except all my books right now are math, computer based. That's all I have time to read. And whatever I'm writing and publishing through Manu and Della Press. So I have books that I buy and support. So got Garfield's book back there, Brother Kofi's book back there. Haven't had a chance to read them yet because, for example, I have a final.
Are you still in school?
Yeah, I'm in school. So my time is split. That's why I don't do a lot of shows lately, like I have during the pandemic in 2020.
What you working on, your master's or a PhD right now?
Master.
Oh, snap! What is it be in?
Computer science. And so I'll probably do a PhD. I'm looking to do a PhD in either Africana studies or Africology or in Egyptology. So
Egyptology.
Yeah, so I may have to do some requisites since my undergrad, and this will be in a totally different field. But if I can convince them that this, like my regular work, can allow me to supersede because of my other trainings, independent trainings and publishing. So we'll see. I just need to see in a particular type of departments. Or I may have to. And what's ill is, I had the opportunity almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I had a full ride to do a PhD in African American history at Cornell University, but I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to do a PhD in African American history. I'm a scientist, so I wanted to do science stuff. And and I look back at it like, nah, I should have did it. And it just did something else, and continued my studies in science independent, because that's just the thing with computers and
You're gonna always have
technology.
money coming
You
in.
No, you're always studying. So I'm always in school, even when I'm not in school, because the technologies change so fast. And 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 so this is why I wanted to come back with the master's, so I have something that is more stable over time, versus with what I did with the undergrad, in terms of uh the that was mainly just software focused. You know what I'm saying? So because the software changes, so you're, regardless, every year you're getting different types of certificates, and learning different types of programs, and it's cumbersome. And so yeah, so that's the reason for the track in which I'm in now. Let me see.
It's cool that you're doing computer science and stuff. That's gonna always be like, lucrative. Like you're gonna always have a stable pool of income. Like, because if you become like a regular like history professor, it's gonna be like, man, it's not a lot of, lucrativity going on,
Uh,
like a certain skill set.
but even still, like, what I want to use the stuff for, it would still be for Africana. So like the plan of creating an online university, for like, I've always had this plan to build an online university. So getting with a team and just building it, because like there was a period of time in the mid 2000s where I was going to all these conferences, whether it's Shekanti Giap conference, the Black Studies conferences, ASCAC, whatever. That when I was finding a number of scholars who were talking about the uh, how the departments are eroding, and how the universities are trying to break up these Black studies programs and departments.
That's what they
And,
doing now.
I'm sorry.
That's what they doing right now.
Yeah.
Like the critical race theory. I don't want to get too much into politics, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
critical race theory, they took out philosophy at Howard University
Mm-hmm.
recently. So I'm like, oh snap, history gonna be next.
Exactly. So the thing is that we don't have our own spaces. So with that in mind, I was like, why don't they just create their own, like, Africana studies, like a legitimate Africana studies, online university, where people can get these degrees and things, and just attach them. I don't know if there's a way that you can, keep it separate, but attach it to a number of universities, so that you still always have an online presence. I mean, you still have a presence, and they're still getting the curriculum, saying necessary, and then you'll be able to expand that, across the world, for universities, for example, in Nigeria, or whatnot, that doesn't teach this stuff. So it's like, it's interesting. Like, I did a recent interview with Dr. Mudupe Oduyoye, from Nigeria. So he's one of the good ones from Nigeria. I'm taking shots at Nigerians, but he, was talking about, like, how they don't have any programs, like Africana studies programs, in Nigeria and Africa, where
Man, they trying
stuff
to
like, you got to go to the States or go to Europe to get these types of curriculums.
they trying to
And
move to Europe, man. That's what they trying to do. They trying to move on to Europe and live a good life. Trying to get out of Africa. That's what they trying to do.
yeah, so it's we're going to have to do something different. So me doing the technology is to be able to create the structure in the university system, for us to be able to keep this going, and to continue to certify, individuals. Peace and blessings, Dr. Duarte Odara, all the way from Brazil, in the building. And we will be interviewing him. I think we scheduled it for the 22nd of this month. Yeah, the 22nd. It's going to be on a Sunday, so y'all be on the lookout for that, and we will be doing it live. So I will have more information closer to that time when we will have our good brother from Brazil back on the program. We've had him on once with Dr. Katuskia, and I'm probably just messing up her name, but I'll get it right one of these days. And again, the link is in the chat if you want to join the panel. And I see we have Usere. You can pronounce it for me. I never heard anyone pronounce it, so I'm all kind of mispronouncing it.
Peace. Newsara.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks. A quick question. I was listening to one of your I think it was the last one or maybe the one before last actually, and you were speaking about I think it's Dr. Fukiao, and you were talking about following the path of the sun.
All right.
And so I'm planning to write a passage, and I think you mentioned you were as well for children in St. Louis right now, and I'm taking a whole lot of notes on almost everything that you post on YouTube, and so a lot of it, I mean, because you touch right on everything I need, and it's just, I don't know, it's really easy when you can, get it from one source and then follow, find the sources that you mentioned. But I mean, you spoke on some of it, and then you said I'll speak on it later, and I don't think you did. And I was wondering if that was intentional, or if it's something that you were like, okay, this is, too deep, and I don't want to go too far into it. But you spoke about following the path of the sun, initiation, which is essentially like following the light, and dingo dingo, being a process, a system, and you kind of expounded on initiation. But I wasn't sure if it was something else that you could give on what they meant in that tradition in terms of following the sun and
Alrighty. Well, first and foremost, thank you for joining the panel, and secondly, for your question. And yes, I did do a part 2 to it, but as I stated in the first conversation, that I will be doing a series on Kimoyo, and the second one on the initiation is on the it is on the Patreon page. And so for the full lesson on that, you would have to join the Patreon. And you can join as low as $5 to get the initiation. And probably this Sunday night or Monday evening, I will be doing lesson 3 on Kimoyo. So we'll be expanding on that. And so, it is a lot, and that's why I had to do it in the lecture. But it is in the initiation into the Kimoyo Cosmogram series, and it is on patreon.com. So those who are on patreon.com right now, they can see it, and of course they can see the Dr. Mudupe Odioye interview and the Dr. Madinge interview, talking about the Basa from Cameroon. So for those of you who have not joined the Patreon, I encourage you to do so. So you have first dibs on information and interviews. And, this is exactly why. So it will be released sometime in the future on YouTube. But right now you can see the full thing on the Patreon page. And I'll at least say this is the concept of following the path of the sun has to deal with, of course, the sun being a metaphor, but in terms of the Kikongo cosmogram itself, but it also has to deal with initiated teachers and rites of passage in education. and so there's a particular type of meanings that are associated with that concept, and I give the citations, and I go into the details on the Patreon page. So that's patreon.com/asarimhotep.
Okay,
So,
perfect. I'll do it. I never joined any other Patreon. Again, I'm not even on social media, man. I'm old school, but this information that you're giving out and the stuff that you speak on, it's a little different. It's
yeah.
vital and it's key. So I'll definitely be joining that Patreon probably as soon as this is over. So
I
I'll figure it
appreciate
out.
it. I appreciate it. And again, like I have the Patreon page, one to support this channel, but two as a fundraiser to get the equipment and the lighting. So like I'm using one of the lights here, and so we can start doing better and more productive shows, but more so because of the film that we're shooting. So you're going to see me going hard in these next few months, trying to fundraise, because I want to be able to get there for the Hoppy tour that's happening in February, and to do some things there and to start shooting. So I'll be putting together a kind of a quasi trailer soon, and the website will be up soon. So I'm doing two websites, so one for Kimoyo and one for the film itself. So it's I have a lot. So if y'all don't see me out and doing a lot of stuff, understand that I'm getting all this stuff right, so that we can do some bigger and better things. And so that'll definitely be one of the things that we're talking about in
Okay.
terms of rites of passage and the like. So I do appreciate all the support that that I've been given so far, and and those who intend to do something in the near future. It is greatly appreciated, and every little bit helps, and I do not take any of this for granted. And so I appreciate the faith that y'all have in me to continue to deliver the the products and services, in regards to these various different subjects, and I hope y'all continue that in regards to this film. And so I want to do it on the top level, so that we can kind of penetrate these spaces where a lot of the more ignorant stuff gets all the shine. So the only way that we are going to be able to do that is if we put something together that is not only factual but entertaining and visually appealing. And so we can raise the bar. So that's my objective, is to raise the bar in regards to this particular type of work. And I want to also thank Sandra Grotcher, if I'm saying your name correctly. Hopefully, you're listening, for your donation to the channel. So I wanted to publicly acknowledge you for that. Thank you, and it is greatly received. So I hope you received my email. If not, I'm thanking you again here. So let me go back to the comments and everything. Again, for those who want to join the conversation, please, hit the link. You don't have to show your face if you don't want to, and join the panel. We can address anything that what's on your mind, and or you could type in your comment, or your what am I saying? Your question, in the chat. So if you are on Facebook, on my Harold Johnson page, understand that if you type in something there, it doesn't necessarily come through on the StreamYard here, but the Asarim Hotep page, it does. So Let me see if anyone said anything on Facebook, on the HJ page. Nope, no one said anything there. So just make sure that I acknowledge everyone's questions and comments. And look like our brother Yusra is having connection issues, and have you back there. And let me see.
I'm back. I had
Yeah.
one more question.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. Dang, it just left my mind. Here it is. Now, I've never heard you speak about. I know you get into linguistics a lot, and I remember you touching on. One time you said there's a story about Sumerians and like where they came from, and you connected the language, and I think and so I was wondering if I missed or if you ever spoke about or looked into some of the older, what they call, I think it's called proto Mayan writing, and have you ever looked into it? Because I see a lot of similarities, but again, I'm not a linguist, but I do listen to a lot of people who are, and from I see a lot of things from looking at the language and hearing things and hearing people speak on certain things in the language in terms of what they are and seeing how they're made. I think personally, to myself, who's not an expert, I see similarities. I was wondering if you've ever looked into it or read anything about it, or anybody who has looked into it.
Okay, so when you're saying Mayan, you're talking about the Mayans over here on this side of the hemisphere?
Yeah, I think, is it Olmec? Is it Olmec? Should I say Olmec writing system, or the Mayan or the Proto-Mayan writing system? When you see their glyphs and stuff like that. Yeah, over here in South America, Central America. Yeah.
Alrighty. That sounds like some Dr. Clyde Winters connections.
And yeah, Clyde Winters, and one more is another person.
Dr. David Imhotep.
Not just David Imhotep. There's one more guy. Man, I don't know why his name is escaping me right now, but Dr. Oh man, what is his name? If I try to look for it, I'm gonna drop out again. That's what just happened when I tried to start looking. Yeah.
Well, I can't say. First and foremost, I can't say that there is a connection or not, because that is not my area of research. But I am very skeptical of anything coming from Dr. Clyde Winters. And I've mentioned this, many times before on this channel. And not because, it's not personal with him. I don't know him personally, but I've known him and of him for a very long time, for about 20 years. And he's even reviewed and gave commentary on my very first book from way back in 2000. I don't even know if that's available anymore. I don't recommend getting it. I've changed so much since then. But so I know him. I'm but what I mean by I don't know him personally, like I don't hang out with him, so I don't. It's not anything like that where it's a jab at him as a person. It's just more so the issues of scholarship. So I know everybody has their tribe, and you just rock with who you rock with. So it's I'm not trying to interfere and get in the way with people who do rock with them. It's just, for me, the standard that I'm used to, at least now, he just doesn't meet when it comes to the researching of languages, the researching of African people, just the level of argumentation. It is not up to par, in my opinion. And I give leeway and flexibility for scholars that may not, their conclusions may not be mainstream. Like, to me, that's that's irrelevant of whether your conclusion is accepted by the so-called mainstream scholars. Because again, coming from a science background, all that matters is, were you able to demonstrate the facts of the matter? And if the evidence doesn't support, I mean, if the evidence support it and the logic is sound and you can't counter or falsify it, then regardless if everybody agrees or not, I'm rocking with the evidence. And so it's nothing to that nature. But for me, with his work, especially when it comes to Mayan and Olmec and him deciphering this, and it's like, no, like he, it's the opposite of Dr. Oyibo for me, where Dr. Oyibo, he just talked crazy, but his actual writings are grounded. Dr. Clyde Winters talks crazy, and his are all over the place.
So is Dr.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I wasn't trying to interrupt. I was just trying to ask a quick. Is he the doctor who said that the Medu Neter hadn't been deciphered? Is that the same? Or is that somebody different?
No, that's somebody. Who was that? Who said that? I'm sorry.
Neter or somebody?
No. That that y'all talking about young Pharaoh and Sarah Sari. No, it was a doctor, but I think he was a medical doctor, who made the argument, and our good brothers, Sean and Wu Jawu and them created or wrote a book addressing that, but I forgot his name all of a sudden. It's not coming to mind, and so that's bad business. But I know who you're talking about. But if it comes up or somebody says it in the chat, then I'll be able to. Yeah, Professor Walter Williams.
Yep.
Walter Williams, he sounds fine.
I'm sorry?
Walter Williams, he sounds, like he knows what he's talking about when he's talking about like religion. But then,
No. Like, and I'm just going to be honest. There's a lot of people who, when I was coming into consciousness in the 90s, like a lot of that stuff sounded legit. But the older I got and the more that I was able to study and learn proper research methods and to actually be in the game and to be in debates with scholars, it helped me to see the limitations of a lot of those scholars who came out in the late 80s and the 90s, and we watch their videos and stuff now. Not saying that everything that they were saying was incorrect, but a lot of the kind of new age, like that's what really gave birth to what is now called the conscious community. It's really the metaphysics community. So you had
like Phil Valentine.
Yeah, the whole Phil Valentines, the Bobby Hemmett's, and anyone of that ilk. It's all comes from metaphysics, and they try to merge metaphysics with history and religion, and we got all kinds of folks now. So that's where it deviated. So you no longer were you reading the materials from the likes of Asa Hilliard, of Dr. Amos Wilson, of Teofilo Benga, of Sheikh Hansi Job. On that level, you're listening to people talking about calcified pineal glands and electromagnetism unks and all this other kind of stuff. And so I got caught up in that when I first came into African consciousness. And you're thinking because somebody has doctor behind their name that this must be right and exact, and that's not the case. Dr. Williams, Walter Williams, is a medical doctor. He is not a historian. He is not he's a medical doctor.
I thought he was PhD all this time, like Dr. Walter Williams.
No, he's not. And I don't know what, I think Dr. Phil Valentine is like a naturopathic doctor. you know,
So,
and not saying that, you know, I'm not putting any value judgment. I just want people to understand that, you know, certain people may have expertise in one area and they use their titles to help validate them in another area for which they may not be as competent in the rules and methodologies of that field. And so that's the issue, you know, there.
but you've never looked at it yours. I try not to, you know, follow like groups. I do start when I was young. I would feel people. I'm like, oh man, I rock with this person, but then they would go off to the left and say something crazy. So I try not to get caught up too much in the agent, just more so in like, you know, like the agency,
Yeah.
and aspect of it. And so, I don't know. I just wonder, have you ever just looked at it or like seen how
No,
they? No.
I just haven't had time.
Okay.
You know, and not to say that it's not interesting. You know, I used to be into a lot of the stuff from Dr. Runoko Rashidi, and you know, rest in peace, good brother. You know, he helped to expand, you know, and give. He's one of those individuals who helped you to have a more global African presence, a more global African perspective. But after a while, you know, the methodologies come in, because you know we got to, you know, ask more critical questions. For example, you know, if so and so left Africa 50,000 years ago, but they maintain their, you know, phenotypes, are they still Africans? What do you mean by an African?
Right.
You know, like you know, why, for example, like, are Europeans not considered Africans, but the, you know, and they emerged a little later than the Africans who left the continent some 50,000 years ago. You know, and some, like, you know, Dr. Runoko Rashidi, whether it's Dr. Wesley Muhammad or even Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, who made the argument that Arabia is Africa.
Yeah, I remember reading that in here, and I think it was Civilization of Barbarism. He said that.
Yeah, I forgot the exact text, but you know, but that's just the point. It just shows you how arbitrary things are, because now you have to include, and that's what a lot of scholars are trying to do. For example, include everything that's going on in the Levant and in Arabia as African. So now you got to consider, you know, Islam and African religion, Judaism and African religion, those people as African people, regardless of their shape. So it's like, it's a lot of waviness and fluctuations, and there's just no consensus on these concepts that we learn. So this is, for example, one of the reasons why I renamed African spirituality Kimoyo. But it's more so, it allows for me to have a more scholastic conversation, because now I have boundaries, conceptual boundaries, in which I can articulate without falling into the trap of what is African or not. Because, you know, even the concept of an African is a European thing. You know, the modern borders were decided by Europeans.
Right.
So even, you know, it's, you know, like African people, even when we wake up, we're really like Neo in Matrix Reloaded. You know, we thought we was free, but then we realized that we're not free.
That's right. That's right.
But I want to welcome on the panel Dr. Odara, Dr. Duarte Odara, and peace and blessings to you. How are you doing, good sir?
Peace and blessings, bro. Asa, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good to be glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Hotep, good night, everybody on the panel. Good night, everybody on the chat.
All the way from Brazil. I'm glad to have you here. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing an exclusive interview with our good brother on the 22nd of this month on Sunday. And so I'll have the flyer and schedule the show soon. So make sure that you guys, again, hit the likes and that is right. Subscribe to the channel and, help us to reach that 10,000 goal and all that good stuff. So what's on your mind, good brother?
Yeah, you were talking about now about the conceptual boundaries of, and cultural boundaries about the continent and the cultural aspect of the African continent. And I heard some brothers and sisters talking about that question because in the genetic way, in the genetic aspect, all human beings, to say human being is to say African.
Exactly.
But at the same time, we got the confusion at this recent time in the human history, which we was miseducated to view ourselves as different people, although we have different culture. In that culture, I mean, this imply a lot of things. So how can we deal with that aspect of the distinction? I
Alrighty.
mean, I don't know if you can talk it right now, or if you are thinking to do it in another discussion, in another program. But I mean, I'm just provoking.
I understand. Yes, and that's something that I've been struggling with for a number of years because, in the early 90s, the in the late 80s, they didn't have those DNA studies. And so we just had the archaeology. So we gotta go back to the time of Sheikh Anta Diop. And I'm talking about the early times in the 40s, 50s. So when he was coming up, they were having these arguments about human beings, and the multi-regional hypothesis was prominent. And what do we mean by the multi-regional hypothesis? That is arguing that they couldn't deny that the Homo genus originated in Africa. So even in the late 1700s and 1800s, they were finding those fossils in Africa, and they couldn't find older ones in Europe or in Asia or anywhere else. But so what they tried to argue is that, okay, so there was an initial exit, but then there was an independent evolution of people in Asia, in Europe, and in Africa, and all these other places. And so, the white folks are a different type of species than the continental Africans and the Southeast Asians or whoever. And so that was a lot of the debates that was going on at the time of Sheikh Anta Diop. And so, of course, a lot of our scholars coming in the late 80s and 90s are still referencing those texts and those debates. And so, but what was emerging at that time was DNA. And so over the years, DNA has conclusively informed us that, all Homo sapiens sapiens, again, originate in Africa. And despite our phenotypic differences, that ultimately we are in the high 90 percentile the same, all around. And that basically, is only one race, and it's the human race. So now this poses a problem for a lot of our African scholars, because what do you mean
Gigantic problem.
so we've been saying this, but we don't really understand what the implications are for that argument, because Asians are Africans, Europeans are Africans, Mexicans and Colombians, all of them are just Africans. They're all so human and African is synonymous. So, but then what does it mean to be an African? What is African philosophy? What is African spirituality? What is African? What is that you're trying to hold on and isolate in distinction between, Europeans? And so this is where a lot of people are still grappling. And so, including myself. And so that's why, I came out with the concept of kimoyo to kind of replace the concept of African spirituality, but more so to describe a series of characteristics that is found on the continent, and then we'll probably have to rename or find a name for a different system if we find it that exists on the continent that doesn't neatly fit under, kimoyo. And so one of the things about kimoyo, which I argued, is that the first criterion is, how does the culture view God? If God is existence in that culture, that is the foundations for them being kimoyo. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff that is built within the system based on that knowledge, that God is existence and God is creation, however you want to say it, unto itself. So now I put a boundary, on the spirituality. So now, when I was having that conversation regarding the atheists, you see why I have all those citations. So now I can group these people together, just based on their conceptualization of God. And then from there, how do they use that understanding of God to develop their rituals, to develop their communities in relationships and things of that nature? Like, how do they, like, everything can fit. And so this is just a way to describe. So it'll be different than what is happening in Buddhism versus what is happening in Judaism. And so regardless, if you say that Israel and Arabia is Africa, well, their religions is not kimoyo. And kimoyo is what dominates on the continent of Africa. So I'm trying to get away from these rigid, boundaries, so to speak, that, may not apply to everyone, but to create, a more reasonable and more systematic and structured way of grouping people. And so it's partly based on what Sheikh Anta Diop talked about in terms of grouping people by language, and talking about the historical factor, the linguistic factor, and the psychic factor. So the psychic factor plays into the conceptualization of God and kimoyo. So like I'm using the Diopian framework in a particular way. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it's a great point you're making, because you are taking the genius of Diop, because even at the time when the DNA wasn't as clear as it is now, Diop provided us with that key to interpret the human beings from their culture, their cultural aspects, which the kimoyo is a great key. As long as you're developing, I've been using it. It's a great starting point.
Exactly. Want to welcome Confidence, Chizoro, Okike, MK, Abantum, number 2, to the panel. Peace, good brother. How you doing?
Peace. How's it going, everybody?
It's going well.
I just
You have a
listening.
question, comment? What's on your mind?
No, I just wanted to check in. I wanted to check in earlier, but I had a call. But I did have a couple questions. Well, I expect to be here earlier, but
Right.
one question I'd like to ask, because I do a lot of work with the Garvey movement. You know, I looked at that book you released, but you never published it. I don't think. The Passion of the Christ or Passion of Osiris.
All right.
You know,
Yeah.
Is that ever going to be, you know, the Congo myth of Jesus, or is that ever going to be printed, or how will we get that, you know, published?
Yeah, in a roundabout way. So we got to remember, I think that was what 2011, and that was really kind of the notes for a debate I was having with a good friend of mine who I grew up with, who became a Christian pastor. And so we was having that debate on the nature of Jesus and whether he existed and and the like. And I was showing that, you know, this Jesus concept, the archetype, I should say, you know, is prevalent on the African continent. And without understanding the role of African cultures that you know spread out at the time, you won't understand. Like, people don't understand, like, why did Jesus have to be pure? Why couldn't he sin? Why did he have to have no blemish? That goes into the sacrificial rites, you know, of African people. And if you don't know about, you know, what it means to kill a cow with no blemishes and things of that nature, you won't understand the Jesus myth. If you don't understand the story of Osiris and how Osiris was given the, you know, we know that Osiris was killed by his brother and then he became the ruler of the underworld. Well, we have texts that state, you know, like the higher God is saying, this is, you know, basically my son who I'm well pleased, and it is I make him judge. So this is when you see the scenes of Osiris being the judge of the deceased souls, you know, who are either looking to, you know, go unto the blessed west, or those who may, you know, go through the, you know, their equivalent of hell, you know, in ancient Egyptian conceptualization. Like if you don't understand these things that came before Jesus, you know, then you won't understand what was going on in the biblical text. And so that is, you know, I plan on expanding on that, but I have other works that I've been focused on. So that is something that I will, you know, it's probably like 3 books away from what the stuff that I'm working on now, because I'm working on you know, getting this book published that I mentioned earlier, the Chiluba Maweja, Yoruba Orisha, and Ancient Egyptian Ak, an exploratory etymological study. I'm doing a whole book on the etymology and the meaning of Kemet, and I actually want to have that ready for the Egypt trip that, you know, I'll be doing the fundraising for. And then the one after that is on quantum field theory as African heritage. So, you know, my mind is on Jesus right now.
Makes sense.
So,
But you had started, I think it's been up 11 years. You started like a presentation, and you only got part 1 up there.
yeah,
So
look,
it's a teaser. It's
I'll
a
be on the
teaser.
road, and then my mind changes the next week.
Yep.
I'm trying to be, you know, more consistent with that. But yeah, that was a long time ago. So yeah, that was that was 10 years ago. almost 11 years that debate happened. It happened in 2011 in San Antonio, and so that was just the notes. So, and the reason why I put that together, because the time constraints that we had, and a lot of the stuff that I was bringing, I knew for a fact that they would not have resources. They wouldn't have came across this concepts before, because a lot of this was original research. And so, I put that together so the people can download and review it after the debate, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to cover, all of that in the debate that we had. So, yeah, I can't tell you when, but yeah, it's in the future.
All right. I had one comment and then a question. The first comment is like I had started organizing with that word Chiena Entu.
All right.
Before you put out your book, and I used it in the original concept. Like I wanted to use it as the Entu expansion, family. I found some lookalike words that kind of meant expansion or circle. So, but that's one comment. So I'm putting that out there. But also, I had a question, and this plays into Kimoyo.
Alrighty.
The concept of Muntu, where you have to go through rites of passages to become a human. I wanted to ask, from your knowledge, how do you think that concept of Muntu and a Bantu played into the Shaka Revolution as far as him expanding his people? Do you think he used that concept, or do you have any evidence? Because I always find it confusing how it's not in play, or it kind of got twisted down in South Africa. And if you even bring that up, you're a madman or you're the enemy. You bring that kind of concept. If you discuss
I can't say specifically how the concept of Muntu played in the Shaka Revolution, and but actually I kind of can, but I would have to review to make sure, because Jordan Ngabani in his text Conflict of Minds really kind of puts all that together. And maybe based upon your question, I can do a presentation on that question for those of us on YouTube. I just need to review that section of his text, because he talks about the Shaka Revolution and how it was grounded in Zulu cosmology. Wow. And so he talks about what it means to be a Muntu and a Bantu, and and things of that nature. It's just been a while since I've just sat down and read the text. So I want to do that and have that as a primary, use that as the primary groundwork to answer that question. And so I don't want to say yes or no without reviewing that and seeing in the ways in which that connects. In general, this is just across Africa that I've noted that a person who is not initiated is almost seen as a non-person, because but initiation, like we've religified the word initiation. Initiation is simply the education. And your educational process within the community informed you of the type of human being that the community expects for you to be. The kind of human being that is able to take on the responsibility for the sustaining, the maintaining, and development and growth of the community, because they understood life as a cycle. And so, of course, you living your best life as a kid, but there comes a point where you begin to mature, into your power, into your purpose. And then, of course, God willing, you are going to grow old and you're going to die. And you're going to die and leave the physical community. So how do we make sure that the community continues to sustain itself when we are gone? And so that's what the rites of passage. And so you got to understand what it means to be human and how to live and interact with other human beings in a society. If you don't get that education, then you will not have the knowledge and the wisdom to operate and live harmoniously within the community. And that's why they believe you to be a child, because you don't have the knowledge on how to gain and maintain power. And for Brother Inyasara, that's part of what is discussed in the initiation conversation on Kimoyo. And so you always want to, because it's about power. It's about taking responsibility for the life of community. And you're going to have to understand those fundamental principles of life, those aspects of life that help things to thrive, and what kills off, thriving in the community and the life sustaining interactions. So that's what your quote unquote initiation is. You about to say something?
Yeah, as you mentioned, sustaining power. I wanted to ask, in response to that, are there any instances in Central Africa of Moyo being like a masquerade or a mask festival? Because where I'm from in Nigeria, we have a similar word called Mo. It's like it's a masquerade. It's like the spirit police. So I'm not sure, but I think there's, have ancestral rites, and then you have the masked dancers that come out and police the community. Or that's how it used to be. Remind you of ancestors. So I remember you spoke about the Pertem Haru. I was thinking that might be, raising Moyo. Or is there any instances of the specific word Moyo being related to like mass dancers?
Not to my knowledge, and I probably need to review. And thanks to Brother Jaded M. Unk, who gifted me this book here in the back is Congo Mask. I'll review that and see if they got something along those lines. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head as far as a masquerade called, Moyo. Because again, Moyo, I wouldn't be surprised, because Moyo is just simply a word. The physical word, the physical representation is simply a word for heart. But the word for heart in African languages also usually is the same word for liver and the lungs and basically the essential soft organs inside the body. And so because these are the centers of life in the body, they become metaphors. They have derived meanings of spirit, of soul, of mind. Because keep in mind that in a lot of African languages, the word for heart and mind are the exact same. So it's just the same as in Egypt, ancient Egypt, that is, for the word id, heart, mind, soul, intellect, spirit, da 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 da. So given that the word moyo is a general word also for spirit, if you have a spirit masquerade, I wouldn't be surprised if you find a festival or a mass called moyo. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. But I can't say that I've come across that in my studies. And so I would definitely at least start there with that book and see if they got something.
All right. Thanks for answering my questions. And peace to the chat. I'll stand by and hang around.
No problem. No problem. And I know I'm going to mispronounce this name, so you can correct me, once you come on. But it looks like Telopele Makua or Makwa. You there, good brother? You can unmute your mic. He may have went to the restroom and come back later. Again, you can unmute your mic. If you can't unmute your mic for some reason, type in the back chat and I'll unmute it.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Peace. It's early in the morning in South Africa. Yeah, good morning to everybody over there.
Good morning. Glad to have you here.
Yes, it's Katelopil. It's like the first KGA is Katelopil. Makua. Yeah, Katelopil Makua.
Thank you.
Yeah. It means progress. Katelopil is progress in Sepedi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Learn something new every day. Well, appreciate you coming on. And that last name, Makua, I believe my maternal ancestry may be from a people called the Makua in Mozambique. And this is just based on DNA testing that we did here in the United States. And so my maternal line directly comes from Mozambique. And I know in Mozambique, primarily the Makua people, or the Makwa people, were taken in the transatlantic slave holocaust to the United States.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting to hear that. I'm quite pleased. And I got a question on that DNA. Does it really have some elements to trace directly into which clan you come from, or they generalize according to the groupings of people in Africa? I don't know if my question is clear.
I think I understand your question, and tell me if I answer this correctly. And so what I would say is that there's several different types of tests that are done in regards to your DNA. And so, for example, you have what is called a composite test. And so we got to remember that one, ethnogenesis and biogenesis are two separate things. And two, the composite, you get half your DNA from your mother and you get half your DNA from your father. And so about a quarter of that DNA will be, from their parents. And then, a smaller percentage will be from their parents, going back, how many generations. So if you find yourself in a situation like most of us African Americans, where you have people who were stolen from modern day Nigeria, Cameroon, Angola, Democratic Republic of Congo, Senegambia, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Mozambique, Madagascar, you're going to have a wide pool, a genetic pool of people who are mixed in with each other all across the United States. So just because, for example, we'll just use this as an example, your great ancestor was taken from the Yoruba people, doesn't mean that their descendants all married and had children with people who were ethnically and quote unquote biologically Yoruba people. So, you know, let's just say it was a male that was taken on a slave ship from Europe or Southwest, what is modern day Nigeria. But when he got here, you know, he married and mated with a woman who originated from Sierra Leone. So now you have these two profiles that into the child comes from Southwest Nigeria and then from Senegal. But then that child gets married with somebody who came from Congo or whose ancestry is directly from Congo. And then that person, you know, their descendants got with someone whose ancestry is directly from Ghana. And so remember, you get the DNA from all of your parents and your grandparents. And, you know, and it's in smaller numbers the more it goes out, but that's what a composite DNA test will reveal. So like in my test, you'll see a lot of, it'll just generally say West African, a lot of, you know, Nigerian and people over here, because it's detecting all of these markers, you know, from all these different places. So I'm broadly more West African than I would be Southeast African. But my mother's mitochondrial DNA goes directly into that area, but it can't tell you necessarily what ethnic group she belonged to. Now I know African ancestry claims that, but to how accurate that really is really up in the air for me. Because you got to keep in mind that just because people are where they at now doesn't mean they were historically there. They could have migrated. And then you also got to remember that certain groups are absorbed in the group. So when we was talking about Tashaka Zulu earlier, and you know, like the Zulu people, the original Zulus was a very small group. But when they went in and started conquering and integrating these different ethnic groups, they all became Zulu.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they may even had a different genetic profile, you know, than them, but they're now all Zulu. So, you know, we just got to keep these things in mind when we're talking about. So I look at it more broadly in a general sense, because the DNA test will kind of tell you what general people, because you may have different groups that speak different languages, but are genetically related, closely related. And the DNA test will pick that up as well. So I don't look at it in the same way as, you know, it's going to tell me that I am, you know, COSA specifically, unless like it's such a unique marker that it can only be them, you know.
All right.
But that's usually not the case. But I hope that is what you were, or that answers the question which you were asking.
Yes, it did. You did answer the question. I've never done it before. At least you gave me a view. I can now understand how it works. But without consuming time for others, let me just quickly jump into the initiation part that you were talking about.
All right.
Yeah. I wonder if there's any evidence. I know you're a scientist. Maybe you can help here.
Okay.
To understand how does, because there are people who actually get initiated by the ancestors themselves individually. Maybe this person will just disappear, like my great grandfather disappeared for 5 years, And when they came back, they were able to make iron for their clan, and he was a great healer. So I don't know the actual facts as to how he was initiated there, but he came back a great healer, and he died a great healer. He healed a lot of people. He was doing a lot of mysteries in a village where they were residing, right in Mpumalanga, just next to Leidenberg. Is in a northeastern Transvaal, old Transvaal, but today we call it Mpumalanga, which is in the eastern part of South Africa. That's where they were residing. So he got initiated and came back. But while he was away, he got 3 wives. His first wife managed to see him and communicate with him during the day at 12 o'clock, somewhere in the bush, but just next to the house. So I wonder if there is any work that you have done to find some facts into this kind of initiation, because some of the people, they get initiated not in a usual school, like you talk about Kimoyo, like Credo Muta went to different initiation schools, and as he indicated that he was still in a journey to enter into other schools, because once you start this kind of initiation, it's like a door opening after you entered a door, you see. So those are some of the initiations where you go into some experts who will take you through. But there are some initiations where you just get initiated separately somewhere in a secret place and come back. And I think some of the mystics around the world, like there is a mystic, I don't know if you've heard of, in India, it's called Sadhguru. He was just one of those people who actually knew stuff, and most of the things that he knew are very much related to our traditional lifestyle. So I wonder if scientifically you have done some work to understand this kind of initiation. Sure.
I see. Yes. Well, the question that I would have to ask is, to what degree could you even study something like that scientifically? Because they're secretive for a reason. And so for me or any other scientist to come in and to do a series of experimentations and then just tell the world about it, that would be problematic for the knowledge. And in part, the wisdom and knowledge of African systems or wisdom traditions are in fact experiential. So part of the reason why you just can't tell anyone anything is because you have to experience it, so that the experience becomes a time stamp, so to speak, a marker within your psyche for you to be able to go back and reference on how to solve a problem in the future. And so we remember things that have a great emotional that has a great emotional impact to us. And that's why we do what we do in the way that we do in terms of initiations, to draw up that emotional experience. And so I want to say also, secondly, that, and I've written on this before in terms of, and I'm borrowing a term from Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu, and he calls it the African superhighway of wisdom. Or I should say that's a phrase, but he calls it the African superhighway of wisdom. And he's one of those individuals who was initiated by the late Cretu Mutwa, but he also has other initiations in Central and Southeast Africa. And one of the things that, that was brought up, and I cite another elder who I've heard this directly from as well, Chief Apetu out of northern Ghana. I want to say he's part of the Dagara people. And that is, they would travel. So like you mentioned, like a 5-year absence. Like that sounds like he was going in different places. And of course, because this African superhighway of wisdom has been going on for thousands of years, certain places know of other places where you can get certain information. And so, we got to remember that a lot of times, that's why I mentioned earlier that initiation is really like a university. It's a school of thought and experiences. And in many respects, a lot of them are guilds. And so in order for you, for example, to learn the deep sciences of metallurgy, you're going to have to go to a different university, a different wisdom tradition that another people may be experts on, which means you're going to have to travel there and have recommendations for people, who've had experiences, who probably have gone there before. And so Africans have been doing this for the longest. And so when you read Credu Mutwa's Indaba, My Children, it's not all Zulu creation stories. These are stories that he gathered on this superhighway of wisdom, because he was initiated in Uganda, he was initiated in Congo and Cameroon, and some other kind of local places, among local groups in South Africa, and even beyond that over the years. And so what he did was compile these stories and retold them in a unique way in Indaba, My Children. And so so this notion of travel, of being able to go amongst other different groups. And again, Dr. Kakosa Kajangu speaks about this. It's in his text. It's in 2 texts. One is called Wisdom Poetry. If you can get your hand on that text, I highly recommend it. It's called Wisdom Poetry. And what it is Dr. Kajangu collects proverbs, African proverbs from across the continent. And what he does is he groups them by the similarity of meaning and context. and then he makes these little poems out of them. And so the text wisdom poetry is going to have these proverbs from all these different groups, into these little poems that he's made, but then he interrupts the poetry with some kind of historical context and things. So that's where he talks about the African superhighway of wisdom that he himself has traveled on, as well as Creative Mutua and others. So I cite that as one of my texts in my article, The African Superhighway of Wisdom. But then there's his PhD dissertation. And it was on my website. I had it for download, but for some reason, and I have to talk with my servers, I think I was blocked. They blocked the downloads on my website because of I forgot what reason it was. So I have to go back, and somebody just pointed this out to me like last week. So I had to investigate it, and that's what they said. And so I'm in the middle of trying to reconcile that so I can make the documents download, because I think one of them had a copyright issue. So someone copyrighted me issue. And that's why they stopped it. But I'll find it again and make it available again, his actual PhD dissertation. So matter of fact, if I could just send it to you directly, if you email me. Do I even have my email? Well, let me see. Well, yeah. So you see it at the scrolling at the bottom. You'll say, this is for those who want to, contribute to the channel financially. But my email is this info@asarimhotep.com. So if you email me and you put in Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu in the heading, and that is Kaikosa Kajangu. I think that's how you spell it.
Sorry for interruption. Which email is it? Is info?
Yeah, the info@asarimhotep.com. I'll just type it up for those who don't see it. And so make sure y'all hit me up at that email address, and I will forward the book to you. The other one, the wisdom poetry, is a physical book, so I don't, and I will want y'all to support him. So if y'all find it online, purchase the book. But this is his PhD dissertation, so I can share that with y'all publicly. So and this is just an excellent text overall. I think it is one of my top texts to read in regards to the African spirituality, kind of the deeper, aspects of the philosophy and things. So it's just an excellent text.
You say it's a PhD
it's
a work
from. I'm sorry.
You said it's a citation.
Yeah, it's called Beyond the Colonial Gaze.
Okay.
The Reconstructing of African Wisdom Traditions. I think that's the full title of the text. Beyond the Colonial Gaze.
All right. Now I will definitely send you an email requesting that.
No problem. So yeah, that is what he discusses. So again, to what extent it would be scientific, it would be historical, it would be narrative, but what goes on inside the initiations, that's a different story. But he goes into some of that in the text, and other folks who have been initiated in their experiences, what they've written. And what he's trying to do is kind of what we try to do is reconstruct, find these commonalities, and so I do it more systematically based on language. And so if I can find the same concepts I should say that if I find the same concepts via language in these different groups, and I can reconstruct it to a proto language, this informs me that this concept was inherited through the groups. But at the same time, we also got to be careful because of the super highway of wisdom, because the Africans traveled and they bring certain knowledge, they bring certain terminologies with them, and that in turn kind of confuses the picture. So I hope that somewhat answers your question, even though I know it doesn't fully.
No, you did answer.
All right.
It's well answered here. Lastly, so that I can give others a chance,
All right.
I got some work of some sort that I want to do, but I will maybe ask for your help.
Okay.
They are stones. I've been in one of our villages where I come from. This weekend I saw some hooves. I think it's the footprint of some hooves on the stone, and I've never heard of such. I think we got about 30 years living in the area. Nobody has spoke about these hooves, but they are in a very far place from the residential area. I went there and I just bumped into these hooves printed on the stone. So I got pictures. So I just want to check if there's any way of tracing back how old are these hooves prints on this stone. And I also got the picture that shows the mountain that I was actually on. It looks like a road. Stones have been moved to the left hand side and right hand side, and then in the middle is just smooth. But the road goes straight into the cliff. It looks like it has been washed away. So I really wonder how we can measure the period of how long that has happened, or how old is that road over that mountain. But I'll send you pictures on the email so that maybe we can see how we can work around this, just to find dates or just to estimate as to how old is this road and how old are the hooves prints on the stone. But still, there are ruins there, the cycles. There are cycles made of rocks, and they look like they were residentials around that mountain. But as I go around, I found this cycle of stones in different places. On the other side of the mountain, it's a cliff. Like on the other side of that cliff, I think there are two kinds of these ruins. They are similar, by the way. And then on the other side, we have about 3 to 5 of these ruins. So I've been roaming all over the area for a couple of years now, and I've been identifying all of these ruins, more especially when there's felt fire. Last time when I went there this weekend, there was felt fire, so I've managed to see all of these things clearly. So I'll send you pictures and see how you can assist me, maybe to check if we can trace dates, or we can, they call it carbon dating. I'm not sure, but we will check. We will check once I send you documents as to how you can assist scientifically.
No problem. Yeah, the dealing with stones is going to be very difficult because it's, unless like if you wanted to date stones and weathering and stuff like that, that's a little easier versus any kind of carvings or paintings. And because it's very difficult, if not impossible, to date, and that's why they use other methods. For example, with like when you talked about the carbon dating, you would need some kind of organic materials to have been, still around, the areas. That's why, like, we can kind of carbon date, like if you went into a cave and you was looking at the materials, because the people who went and lived in the cave, they kind of ate, dropped some bones, they may have burned something, so you can kind of date this because it has organic material. But that's not the same as the stone itself. You can't carve, you can't say, you can't date if somebody carves something or writes something, unless there's some way that we can, get organic material, scraping it like paint or something. That's possible. But we may have to refer to some scientific material that they try to use, like with pyramids and the rock paintings, like in the Sahara and stuff like that. So they have to deal with those types of issues. And so I can definitely share those resources with you as well, in terms of how they grapple with that, dealing with that in North Africa, and then seeing if we can apply that in South Africa regarding, any kind of, regardless of the situation, dealing with dating stones and the complexes, and what else should we be looking for. If we can't directly date that, we can probably indirectly do it by looking at some other material that may have been left and survived in the area. So yeah, I definitely look forward to that, and of course I'll share any resources that I have that may help you along the way.
I will be glad. I will be glad. That's a great pleasure for me. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I think it was in your Sarah who you said you had a question.
Yeah, a few questions and comments just based off of the brother from South Africa and what he was asking. I remember reading a book by Credo Mu called Zulu Shaman. I'm not sure if you've heard that one, but
yeah, I have that book.
Okay, I still haven't finished it. I read really slow. Sometimes I'm just trying to like really retain all the information. But I remember in the beginning of it, he spoke about when he became a Sangoma, and he was saying that it wasn't for everybody to become the Sangoma. You have to have like a sickness that happens to you called. Okay, I'm not even gonna try to, but there's a sickness that they call uku twasa or something like that, twasa. And it happened to him around 13 or 14 years old. But there's another there's another sort of like different. There's several different type of traditional healers in South Africa, and one was called like a Inyanga or something like that. But the Inyangas, they were to inherit the profession from their relatives, but the Sangomas, they had to receive a call from the spirits, like what seemed it usually happened to like young men. And so I remember him writing about that and speaking about that. And so
and that would be the Nganga, coming from the Congo language and perspective. So the Nyanga and Nganga are the same. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's cool.
Or Fukiao. So if you hear Fukiao talk about Nganga among the people in Congo.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I was wondering if his grandfather, or who the brother was speaking about, may have been, in Yanga, because it seemed so. I guess we would only know. So I wanted to ask him. This is just part one of my question. If did he know if possibly somebody else in his family specialized in the craft of smelting, or like working with iron, like he said his great grandfather did.
I can't recall.
No, I meant for the brother, because he asked you the question. He was saying his grandfather disappeared, and so that's why I was asking possibly if it had happened to anybody else in his family prior to that worked with iron. I just remember him writing about that, just so I can help him like the pieces of what he was searching for.
All right. Oh, thank you. I cannot read your name here.
Niusara.
Oh, Mizara. Yes. All right. Thank you, brother. Actually, there is no history that shows whether my great grandfather was linked to some great healers before him. We only happen to know great healers through him, but in the Makua traditions, there were great shamans because they came from Tanzania, and as they cut Mozambique, as they brought in borders, there is a group that was left in Tanzania, and the other group, the largest group, is in Mozambique as we speak. So if you go into Tanzania, there is a museum called Makumbuzo Museum. There is a Makua house in that museum where they show that the Makua came up with spears, came up with eggs. So there is that kind of history that links us to that. But in Maitland, we haven't really identified a Makua who was a metallurgy, not maybe a metallurgy, but somebody who did what my great grandfather did. But in the Makua history, when we go back to Tanzania, there is that. There is a trace, there is a link that shows us some tracks as to how the Makua came up with certain things. You see that? But in Maitland directly, we don't have any sign that can show whether we were linked to iron smithing, stuff like that. And regarding Bungaka or the Inyanga work, the shamanism, there is a trace, even though it's not really in the same way that my great grandfather was initiated separately somewhere, but the Inyanga system, it's more of you acquire this kind of a knowledge from your family members. They hand it over to you before they die. As they age, they will identify one member within the family and teach them this. So the Maguas are great in shamanism. So that was there. We can trace it back because when we came into South Africa, we arrived in South Africa, gave some great ways of fighting because we got one man called Marang Rang, was trained by the Makuas, who was fighting for the Bakuni. Bakuni are the people who used to reside in the eastern part of South Africa, just next to Swaziland, where they used to fight wars with other nations. So Marangrang was one of those people who just used to send a spear while he was at a certain mountain, and the spear will go a long distance, kilometers, and maybe step about 15 people, and the spear will come back to Marangrang. So Marangrang was actually groomed by the Maguas. So we can maybe go back to that history and able to find some clues as to how great was the Magua shamanism. Now, what my great grandfather went through, is been perceived as the kind of initiation where one just disappears or get taken by a serpent into a dam, and he will disappear there for some time. But we haven't find out as yet as to how he disappeared. But there is only a guesswork now, where they say he might have been taken by the water serpent and got initiated there. We are not that much sure as how he got initiated, but he just disappeared for 5 years and came back with all of these mysteries. You see that? Yeah.
Are you familiar with Umlando, or like Guardians of the Umlando, like the tribal history, like UMLANDO? No.
Umlando.
Yes, sir.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that, but what I can tell you regarding our initiation systems in South Africa is quite tricky, because you will find many groupings. We got initiation groupings such as, when we go into spirituality, there are groupings like the Balozi. The Balozi initiation is something different compared to Umdawe. And then we got Umguni. Those three types of initiations are so familiar in South Africa, but Umlozi is so difficult. You get initiated by the ancestors themselves. As an individual, you will able to hear things, you're able to perceive things, but being taught by this Umlozi ancestor, somewhere in your own way, like I do, I go to the mountains. So Umlozi ancestor is the kind of an ancestor that will make you have a desire to go to the mountains. You just roam around the mountains. As you're roaming the mountains, you'll get some thoughts, some ideas will just drop into your thinking stream, where you will feel like I should go reach that end of the cliff. When you get there, you will find what I found. You'll find maybe prints or certain things. You see that is the kind of initiation that or the kind of an ancestor that we walk with. So Umlozi is one of the complicated initiation and one of the complicated ancestral spirit. So Umdawe, you get people who will actually beat drums for you and do all of this medicinal stuff for you, so that you can maybe able to link and open up to the spirit.
Okay.
The same applies to Umguni. So you identify these people by the kind of clothes they wear. They'll wear maybe a red cloth. This red cloth will have maybe an animal like a lion on it, and that is umdawe, and then we'll have umguni, and umguni they also have a different cloth, a cloth that will maybe have a kind of a sun. Yeah, that is some of the symbols that you will find. And then there is umluzi. The umluzi, you will have a cloth that is bluish and white, but it will have a bait of some sort. We call it haga. We call it haga, a guinea fowl. A guinea fowl on that cloth will be seen. So I just wanted to come into these three kinds of ancestral spirits that I'm talking about now, trying to answer what you were asking as to whether we are linked to Umlando. Umlando, I'm not sure if I understand it correctly, if that weight is linked to a spiritual grouping, or because Umlando in Zulu it means history.
Yes, it's the keepers
Yeah.
of traditional stories. Like they're like the griots, or like the keepers. So I just asked that because you're giving out so much wisdom and information. I was into initiation. I was just wondering possibly if you were linked to the Ulando, because that was also that's the only book of Credo Mutwa that I have, the Zulu Shaman. So I'm definitely interested in trying to do initiations and bring that back to our people here. And I'm just trying to find out as much information as I can whenever I can. So I'm taking notes and reading and trying to make sure that when I do it with the youth here, that I'm doing it right. And so that I'm doing it in a way that, I make sure that the ancestors are proud, and I'm doing it from a pure place. So I'm just asking as many questions as I can. But I'm definitely thanks for that, sharing that. The last part, and I'll let someone else go. I just wanted to share this real quick. Was I know you might find this interesting because you asked about DNA or something like that, the connection, and it just made me think about a story. I'm here in St. Louis right now, and there's a story about the first Olympics that happened in the United States, and it happened in St. Louis at Washington, like right across the street from me, in the Forest Park in Washington University right now, where they took different people from all over the world. They had the first Olympics here, but during that first Olympics, they also had a World's Fair, and in World's Fair, if you study it during the Olympics at 1904, they brought I want to say 5 or 6 people from South Africa, and all these people were kind of taken against their will, and they brought them here, and they were in a zoo, living outside. It was like a human zoo, is what they called it. And there's a lot of other things that I don't want to digress and talk about Otabanga and all the people they took from the Congo and what happened to them, but the 6 South Africans, I believe, that they took from South Africa and had here in the zoo, displaying their dominance of the world. And the South African part, there were people here in St. Louis when the so-called blacks could go and experience it, they would see them, and and they would feel so sad because of how they were treated, that one day the people from St. Louis, when it was a day for the African Americans to come to visit the World's Fair when they could go, they went and they brought them regular clothes. So they put the regular clothes on these 5 or 6 South Africans, and they walked out of the World's Fair into St. Louis to never really be found again. So I guess they sort of just mixed in with all of the other people here. So if somebody did do a DNA test, we don't we some people here in St. Louis, I'm pretty sure in 1904 that they weren't able to sort of migrate their way all the way back to South Africa, but at the same time, who knows? But possibly they stay here when the families of people here and sort of just amalgamated or mixed in. So a lot of people here might have some South African DNA. I just thought that was an interesting story that I heard about and just wanted to share that with you.
All right. Yes. Yeah. No. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think the DNA somehow contributes, the DNA test and the work that they do in the lab through this DNA work is quite amazing, and we really maybe have to advance it even better to make it work better for us, because uh, we come to realize that most of the people in diaspora do link, and they actually need that physical link with people at home, people right into the continent. So DNA, yes, is working, but we really have to advance it into a way that will locate people and help them maybe link to their lands, even though they can't find exact families, but if they can maybe be linked to their lands, because a land is more of a nation, but it's just a small portion of a nation or a small division within a nation. If we can able to advance the DNA work to locate people in that way, then most of the people in diaspora will be assisted, because most of them are so much gifted. Not that ancestors operate through tombs, because that is a norm in our nation here. We actually prefer tombs more than the spirit, but I can see most of the people in the diaspora operating through spirit, and the only thing is to link them directly to the land, and then the land maybe can able through some systems of our divination can able to link them to the family. And once they are linked to the family, that's where they will maybe open up other dimensions within them, because they're so gifted, and the seed refused to die in them. The great work that was done by their ancestors, it is still within their genomes, and it is operating heavily, so to an extent where they do amazing work, but not able to maybe to send maybe some great, to make some great symbols of how Africans work through their genomes or their DNA or their genes, even though they are far away from their origin, but they still have some inheritance. They inherit certain things from their great fathers or great parents, or
we lost you, brother.
Yeah, no. I'm trying to explain something that is very easy to explain in my language. I'm not good in your English language, but I'm trying to indicate that if we can have advance this DNA to able to link these people to their families, they will able to know where they get all of these wise things or great things they're doing. They can link their inheritance directly to the families in Africa. Thanks.
Did you? But I want to ask you a quick question. Did you say something about divination? You said that possibly you think that we could use divination to help connect people.
Yes. Through divination, there's a system that they use. They use bones, mostly in our traditional divination here at home. We use bones. We use bones from animals, and we use some stones mixed with those bones. But currently, I am doing my divination using stones only, like small crystals. But that I only do for few family members. It doesn't work well when I do for everybody or anyone. So I only use that for few family members. So divination that I'm talking about here, it involves bones. You throw bones, and they will maybe help you to understand certain things. Maybe you want to know where was your maybe your great grandfather located. So they can maybe throw some bones and tell you they were located at a certain mountain, next to a certain river, or next to a certain big tree that maybe is still available today. You see that? But again, there is another kind of divination where you will find what we call psychic, didupe. Kasipedi, in Sepedi, we call them didupe. Those are psychics. They will, without stones, they will maybe go into a trance and tell you, maybe see the place where your great grandfather were located before, and when you go there, maybe you'll find ruins. You will find certain things that will be a symbol that shows as to people lived there maybe many years ago. You see that? So there are 4, if not 5 kinds of divination systems that are used, but I only talked about 2 now.
Yeah, we're definitely going to, if you can share your email with the good brother in the back chat, and you can share some insights with him, as well as answer more of his questions. Let me bring Dr. Oduro back in. His questions. So make sure that y'all share, or exchange emails. Y'all can do that in a private chat in the back here. But it just reminds me of, like, it's just as you stated. So, like, a lot of people wonder, why am I so attracted to Bantu culture and language? And then to come to find out some years later, doing a DNA test, that my maternal ancestry, in terms of her mitochondrial DNA, X chromosome, is from Southeast Africa, amongst a few of the groups who Bantu speaking groups, who lived in Mozambique. And so, did the ancestors guide me this way? Some will argue maybe not. But the point is, the ancestral memory, we got to kind of pay attention to, and really kind of hone in on those parts of us that are attracted to certain spaces, and maybe the DNA, will lead you along that path. And again, remember that with DNA, you can't really take it to mean that these are the exact people, because people migrate even then, and ethnic groups change. For example, I remember in Philadelphia, I was working at this company, and there was these two continental African brothers who worked there. They were from the same ethnic group, but they spoke two different languages. From Senegal, they were from Senegal, and I'm like, how are y'all the same ethnic group, but y'all speak two different languages? They don't understand each other, so they can only understand each other if they speak French or English.
That's sad.
I don't know if it's necessarily sad, but it
know
tells
that
you the complexities of identity in Africa.
You know,
the
our
colonizers' language. They can only talk to each other in the colonizers' language instead of a language of their own.
I mean, I'm pretty sure if they learned each other's language, but that's one of the reasons why a lot of groups keep colonial languages as the main language, because if you make one group's language the language of the place, a lot of times in a lot of areas it starts conflicts. So if it is the colonial language, everybody knows what it is, and it's not attached to any one group, and it's just a way for many. Because you got to remember, like, it's not like here in the United States. You enter an area, and just 20 miles in either direction, you're talking to groups who speak 10 different languages. And so it can be a difficult thing. It's also why you find most continental Africans speak more than one language. Like, they pick up on languages faster because they have to communicate with other groups in the area who speak a different language.
That's probably how it was back in the day too, like before, European and Arab slavery,
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add on the part of language. When you speak of different language from a same ethnic group, it is happening. In South Africa, we got about 11 official languages, but they're supposed to be around 15 official languages, not just 11. So most of these languages, let me take isiSwati, isiNdebele, isiZulu, isiXhosa. Those 4 languages, they are actually grouped as Nguni language. They are more the same, but it's difficult for the Zulu to speak isiSwati. And the Swati can speak isiZulu very easily, because isiSwati, it goes with dze. Ndiyatanza. It means I love it. Ndiyatanza. You see, so Zulus can't easily speak this the DZ at the end. They can't use that. But in Sepedi as well, we have many languages that fall under Sepedi. We got the Sekoni, we got the Sepulana, we got Silobedu, we got Setlokwa, we got many languages that fall within Sepedi. But I can speak I'm Mopedi. I can't speak Silobedu, but I can hear the Balobedu when they speak, and they speak so nicely. You see? So when you look into these languages, they're just dialects. They're just dialects, but that's why you will. It's not that bad, as one of our guests said. It's bad because we can only converse through the slave master's language. No, it's so much of a dialect because maybe certain people stayed in a certain area, and then when they stayed, their language get influenced to sound like the neighbors of the neighbors where they reside. So if I stay next to the Sotho, Southern Sotho people, the dialect that will come from there, it will be much of the influence of the neighbor of the Sotho nation. So it will be so much influenced by the Sotho nation rather than to be influenced by the Setswana people. The Batswana, they are actually the bearers of these languages that comes from. I think they come from somewhere into these people of the Khoisan of the northern Kalahari. That's where Setswana comes from. But now Setswana gave birth to Sepedi, gave birth to the Southern Sotho, Seshweshwe. And then within Sepedi, you have so many dialects, you see. And then that makes it easy for people to communicate. Yeah, it's not that bad that we sometimes not able to communicate, but communicate through the slave master's language. No, it's a wonderful thing to have all of these dialects. I just wanted to bring that into the spotlight, that all of these dialects are important, and somehow they make us converse very easily, because when you go far into Mpumalanga, there is Sepulana there. Sepulana, it has a little bit of Shangani in, it has a little bit of Sepedi, it has a little bit of Zulu and Swati. That kind of a dialect called the Sepulana. So it's so easy for most of the people in that area to understand each other. When you speak Sepulana, you almost speak Shangani, Siswati, and Sepedi at the same time. You see that? Yeah, I just wanted to bring that on the spotlight. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, that's like if you go to Jamaica, I wonder if that video is still up. Like you can go into parts of Jamaica, especially like where there is a like in the mountainous areas. The dialect,
places.
yeah, the dialect of the patois that you hear there, just the rest of the islands can't understand it. It's deviated so much from the dialect variants that you find in other parts of the island, even though it's a small island. And and so to them, they're the same ethnic group, but they can't understand each other. And so it was only in the sense that a linguist such as myself can look at it written down and see the similarities, if at all, and see where there was erosion in terms of the phonology or in the grammar in terms of morphemes and things, but this is something that happens all the time. So, but and at the same time, like one of the things that I mentioned in my Nesubiti book is that when you go into Nigeria, there is a so-called spiritual language that only a small group of people know. Well, come to find out that it's not, it's not a language that, the spirits came and gave to this small group of priests and priestesses, but what had happened was that there was a group who migrated into that area who brought with them their culture and their priesthood, and it survived. It was integrated into the Yoruba tradition, and the language of the people who actually spoke it, who migrated there from I think further west, maybe as close as Ghana, just they maintained that language, but only kept it within the spiritual tradition from which and I think it was initially just something for women that they brought it there for them. And so now you have this language here amongst this. And then there's another African language where the men speak one language and the women speak another. Like the women have their own language. And so language in Africa is very, it is a very interesting subject, and it's fascinating, at the same time.
Since we talking about languages, why don't you consider Afro-Asiatic an existing what do you call Afro? You said Afro-Asiatic don't exist, but when you look at like the Berber people, well, not the Berber people, but their language is called Tamashek, and when you listen to like the Tamashek people talk, it sounds Middle Eastern or Arab, but at the same time you hear like African stuff in it. Like why don't you consider Afro-Asiatic a real like a Bantu, like Bantu dialects? Why isn't Afro? Why don't you believe Afro-Asiatic is the same? Like,
okay, well, there's several things that we have to unpack in your statements. So first, if you hear these so-called African elements in Berber, you got to remember that just like our good brother mentioned earlier, if you live closer to a particular type of people, and let's say that there's a lot of interaction with you, or there's a certain type of power dynamic, your native language may be influenced by your neighboring language.
yep.
And so that's one aspect that you have to keep in mind when it comes to the Berbers. But the issue with Afro-Asiatic, this is a more so a scientific issue. And so in linguistics, how we group languages together, we have to have a scientific method that allows for us to not group individuals together based upon chance lookalikes. And so, in the standard in like physics, chemistry, things of that nature, we have what we call the scientific method. And the scientific method is a methodology that attempts to falsify a hypothesis. And we do this by a number of experimentations that allow us to get to the heart of what the matter is that we're studying, right? And so it's a way of knowing by eliminating chance. So the more experimentation that we do, if we change this, this, and this, and no matter what, we're getting the same or similar results, that means it is standing up to scrutiny. And that, what we are observing is representative of reality. And so that's what the scientific method is to do. So in historical comparative linguistics, our scientific method is called the historical comparative method. And this method is designed to virtually eliminate chance as an explanation for the similarities between two or more languages, right? So if you look at a language and you see a word bad in one language and then it means something that is terrible, and then you see another word in language 2 that says is pronounced bad as well, and it means something similar, you would look at that and say, well, these two words are the same. That that these languages must be related. A linguist will look at that and say, no, they could be pronounced the same and have a similar meaning by chance, because you have remember that human beings can only pronounce so many sounds given the limitation of our mouths, jaws, and throats and the nasal passages. So we can interrupt sounds to create these digital distinct units, that we call phones, right? And so given the many hundreds of thousands of ethnic groups and languages across the world, you are bound to find words or combinations of sounds that sound the same as another combination of sounds in another language on a totally opposite end of the world. So there's just a high level of chance that you're going to produce in your language a similar word and to some extent may have a similar meaning as another word in language, in a totally separate part of the world. So how do we eliminate that and make sure that, if we're saying that language A and language B are related, that they are in fact related and not in the similarities we're seeing are not the result of chance lookalikes. So keep that in mind. So when it comes to Joseph Greenberg and his Afroasiatic phylum, his Niger-Congo phylum, his Nilo-Saharan phylum, his, what was the other one? His Khoisan phylum. These were groupings, these are like these big super groups of languages that were not grouped based upon the scientific method that we call the historical comparative method in linguistics. He grouped them together because the words sounded alike. And so this has been an issue. And matter of fact, there is let me see if I can find the name of this text real quick.
Like, I think you used it before.
I'm sorry?
I think you brought up Negro Banter. You used Greenberg for one of your whatchamacallits. So I remember a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share my screen real quick. And hold on one second. So for example, like when the Africans were saying what you see on the screen here, they try to look at us crazy. And here is, let me see if I can increase the size on that share so y'all can see. Here we go.
Rethinking the relationship between Egyptian and Semitic, the morphological, lexical, and phonological evidence.
The morphological, lexical, and phonological evidence. So remember, like I would get into these debates with a lot of folks on YouTube talking about that Semitic is not, directly related to ancient Egyptian, and you can't prove it that the sound, like Theophilo Benga and other African linguists have been saying this for decades. So now here comes, a European, Dr. Aaron or Irene Wilson Wright, I believe it's Aaron, says, although Egyptologists and Semiticists alike agree that Egyptian and Semitic are genetically related based on morphological evidence, they have yet to establish systematic sound correspondences between the two language families. So one of the ways that we eliminate chance in linguistics is we have to set up reoccurring sound meaning correspondences between the lexicon and the morphology in between two or more languages. So what he's saying is that, the Egyptologists and Semiticists have been arguing for years that Semitic is genetically related based on morphological evidence, and they have yet to establish systematic correspondences between the two language families. The lack of sound correspondences in turn raises doubt that the relationship between Egyptian and Semitic and necessitates a renewed analysis of their shared features. In this talk, I will review the morphological, lexical, and phonological evidence for a genetic relationship between Semitic and Egyptian by comparing Proto-Semitic and internally reconstructed Egyptian forms, a standard historical linguistic procedure that has helped establish numerous language families, ranging from Indo-European to Uto-Aztecan. Based on this comparison, I argue that there is insufficient evidence to support a genetic relationship between Egyptian and Semitic. This is not to say that the two language families are not genetically related, only that it is impossible to detect a genetic relationship between them using the current methodology. And so it is what this particular linguist is concluding here, just between Semitic languages and ancient Egyptian, is what we've been saying about Afroasiatic as a whole. You can't set up sound meaning correspondences between the so-called language families that make up Afroasiatic, the phylum. And this is what we need in order to say that a language is related. And so what a key point in this as well is when he says that although Egyptologists and Semiticists agree that Egyptian and Semitic are genetically related based on morphological evidence.
And what does that mean, like morphological?
A morpheme is a part of a word that serves a grammatical purpose.
So it sounds similar.
If I say run is the root verb, right? But if I say running, the ing at the end of the word run is a morpheme. It's a morpheme that we add to the end of verbs to indicate a continuous action. Running, walking, talking, laughing. That's a morpheme. And so it's just as our good brother mentioned earlier, when languages interact with each other, they will kind of converge on one another and they will borrow words and borrow morphemes from each other. This is why you see these so-called morphological evidence in shared morphemes between ancient Egyptian and Semitic, because they've been living close to each other and interacting with each other for thousands of years. However, when we do the root test that tells you if they're related or not, he has to conclude, based on this comparison, the historical comparative method, I argue that there is insufficient evidence to support a genetic relationship between Egyptian and Semitic.
Now,
so that's why this is important to to understand how linguistics is done and why Afroasiatic does not exist, because you have not been able to establish the language phylum based upon the methods that are used to establish relationships. So there's so much literature out there about the relationships of certain African languages that have never been put to the test.
So European scholars are just honestly just making this up to, because that it's starting to sound like they just made that stuff up so they can further separate North Africa from everybody else, and even like Ethiopia and all that, areas too. Just
part of it is that, and who knows, other motivations. But the point is that it was an unscientific methodology that was used to establish the so-called relationships, and this is at the heart of the issue with Afroasiatic. So there have even been other European scholars who have said that this stuff is pseudoscience, what Greenberg and others have done.
I mean, the beginnings of linguistics with Greenberg.
I'm sorry?
The beginning, like calling his stuff like Greenberg's stuff on linguistics pseudo.
Yes.
Because that Negro, like what he said, Negro Bantu, every time I hear somebody using that, I'm like, what the? Y'all don't do white European? You know what I'm saying?
But that's one of the reasons why I, for example, Teofilo Binga, trying to correct the wrongs of Greenberg and his classification, he created a language family called Negro Egyptian, and so while the evidence for the grouping was based upon a rigorous method, the naming of the group is what is unscientific. And so that's why I changed Negro Egyptian to Chena Intu as a language family. And so, but that's a whole, saying different discussion in of itself there. But I want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
With this, you have your doctorate thesis about the name of the branch.
I have so many theses that I have to write. But yeah, that's part of the larger discourse is how do you group, languages and people if you can, and what are the methods involved in that process. So yeah, it's an ongoing, task. But
so what would we consider like the language that the Ethiopians speak? Because like their language of scholarship is like Gez, and like they've been mixing with the Levant, the people from the Levant, for like thousands and thousands of years, like since the time of Solomon. What would we consider like those languages that we ain't got a name for? What is that we ain't got no name for yet? You know what I'm saying?
Got names for them, and they follow in the Semitic languages. Like Ge'ez is grouped in the Semitic, and
so
I'm sorry.
So they would just clearly belong to the Semitic language branch.
Yeah, because the native original Cushitic speakers adopted the language. So that's another thing that you got to understand about people, is that people abandon languages and adopt foreign languages. Sometimes it's a result of being forced, like in the case of African Americans. Like, we speak English because of the transatlantic slave holocaust. And so our native language we no longer speak. And so it was the same thing when it came to these Cushitic speakers, because the people with the power and the prestige were the Semitic speaking people in Southern Arabia, who they were doing a lot of trade with. So you had whole communities, and there doesn't seem to be any indication like they were forced. But you have whole communities who adopted the Semitic language, the unknown Semitic language, and it just kind of evolved naturally in the way that it has amongst those speakers. And so that's what gave it the confusion that Semitic languages originated in the continental Africa borders as we understand them today. And that is not the case. Semitic language originates in the quote unquote Middle East, in the Levant area. And those speakers spread out, in those dialects formed, and those people migrated south into Arabia, and some back migrated into Africa and interacted with those Africans there, and they adopted the language. It's the same as when you talk about the Batwa people in the Congo, the so-called pygmies. We don't know what their language was before, but the prestige came in with the Bantu speaking people, and they adopted the Bantu languages, and then it just naturally differentiated in its own way. But they no longer speak their native language.
Isn't Bantu? Isn't that like a blanket? That's like a blanket term, isn't it? Just anybody who's from
remember that linguistic terms are not ethnic identities. These are just labels for groups of speakers who share common lexicon, common morphology, and common phonemes. So it's just a linguistic label. You can call them the microphone people. It wouldn't matter. It's not an ethnic identifier. It's simply a language grouping. And the reason why they named it Bantu is because the original linguists who came up with the term noticed that in all of these languages that he came across in Central and Southern Africa, they all had variations of the same word for man.
Yeah, Ubuntu, right?
No,
Ubuntu,
just Muntu or Into, and with this various different prefixes and suffixes and sound erosions. So when he looked at all of these words for man, that's when he called it the ba being the plural form of the word muntu, which is the singular, and of the word for person, the word for human being, and so that's how it got his label. But he could have labeled it anything, but it's not about the label and what it means. What is being talked about is the shared features in the languages that you would have to group them in a way that, the only way that you can make the argument that they belong together is that they all derived from a proto-language, a proto-ancestral language, which we call Proto-Bantu. That's just a linguistic. Who knows what the people actually named themselves at the time, if they did at all, but the language that gave birth to the modern Bantu languages we call Proto-Bantu.
and proto means like before, right?
Exactly. So before the common Bantu that you see today. And so you got to understand, like when you're talking about Greenberg's definitions, Greenberg grouped together a whole bunch of families. So he grouped together Semitic family, ancient Egyptian, the Cushitic family, the Chadic family, and Chadic may not even be a legit family.
Yeah, that sound like some made up too, because some of
all
those
of them are made up. All names are made up. All of them are made up. So that's no language family, no language comes out of the sky. So that's we got to get that out of our head. It's all made up. They're just talking about a group of languages that seem to have originated near Lake Chad. It's Chadic. And so that's, again, these labels are arbitrary. So the groupings, he's grouping all of these families together into a super family called Afro-Asiatic. Niger Congo is supposed to be a super family of various different language families, including Bantu, et cetera, et cetera. But you can't just group people together because things appear. And we know in science that appearances can be deceiving. So you have to have ways and you have to go through the process of demonstrating the relationship to, you can do no more tests. And no matter what test that you do, it all comes to the same conclusion that these languages are related. And that has yet to be done for Niger Congo, Afroasiatic, and any of the other groups under Greenberg. And that's why until you prove it, until you go through that process, it does not exist.
Greenberg probably have to be thrown out then if, you know, like a lot, because a lot of stuff you telling me about, I'm like, man, it's like you just make it. Well, you said they make stuff up, but
Everyone, all anything is made up. You know, that is and he wasn't just, you know, making it up out of nowhere. Like he just decided one day. He noticed similarities in words and lexemes, but that, you know, there's so many explanations for why they sound alike. And so again, when you're doing science, and especially in the context of relationships between different languages, you have to establish whether it is the result of chance. That means it's a coincidence. You have to, so you have three hypotheses. You have it is chance. You have it is borrowings. So just like with the neighbor situation, like we live close to these people, so we borrowed some of the words from their language. So you have the hypothesis that it is a chance, it's just a coincidence, or it's a borrowing from another language, or it is inherited from a common ancestor, or the null hypothesis that it is there's not enough evidence either way. There's just no, you know, you always have to conclude the null hypothesis. So when you're doing any kind of linguistic work, you always got to keep those four things in mind. That's what you're trying to look for. And so your hypothesis is Amazulu is related to Kikongo. And you go through your experiments for each, you know, lexicon, each morpheme, whatever. And then you have to establish that whether, you know, it is the result of chance, the result of inheritance, it was a borrowing, or there's not enough information, you know, the null hypothesis. So this is what we got to keep in mind. Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on this language issue. Language, as much as are made up, primordially, a language is more of a spiritual work where in primordial times words were used in a spiritual way. Even now there are words that are used spiritually. If they catch you using certain words, they get into electronic waves of some sort. I cannot prove that, but they get transformed into a sound wave that when it reaches your nervous system in a form of, let me say, neurologically, they get to influence your brain to work in a certain way. For example, if I can mention that you talked about bar, the word bar, it means plural and it means two. Then in our language, in African languages, when you say bar, it sends a very strong wave that you, even if you don't understand the language, but you'll get the sense that this weight that has been mentioned by, that sounds, it means something in something plural. There is this kind of a sense that you will pick when these weights are used in a primordial form. But currently, we seem to have lost that spiritual wisdom of using these weights. Weights were used, if we go back to our clan praises, when I recite my clan praises, there are certain things that you will understand when you hear these words, more especially if you are familiar with our South African languages. There are certain things that will be evoked in you, certain things that you will understand, certain things that you will visualize when I recite my clan's praises. Then that's how spiritual they are. In a sense that these words, they send some certain signals to you, because our primordial, our old formation of words. This old formation of words sometimes carries certain spiritual powers because they've been used thousands of years ago, and then they kept they kept given to generations. From this generation, it was given to this generation in the form of a clan praise, of which most of the ways in our clan praises are not changed that much. There are ways that I don't understand in my clan praise, but such a word, when it's recited, there is a certain feeling in me that shows certain things, that moves me in a certain way. I don't understand the word, but there's this movement that is happening within me when that word is mentioned, because the word comes from primordial, comes from far away, comes from the beginning, I can say, of that kind of a language. And what I wanted to bring in now is that original words of our languages are so spiritual, in a way that when you find them in our praises, you will able to have some certain things evoked in you. So neurologically, we get touched by some certain sound waves that communicate special things into our nervous system. You see that? That is what I wanted to bring in, even though it's difficult for me to put it in the English way, in the English language. But in my mother tongue, I could maybe have put it very much easier for everybody to understand. But for now, it seems difficult for many to understand what I'm trying to indicate when I say primordially they carry spiritual powers. Sure.
Yes, indeed. Well, fellas, we're going on 4 hours on the program.
I could be on all day, man.
I can't, because I got to go to work in the morning, and so
Oh yes, yeah.
it's a long day for me on tomorrow, and I got finals that I got to deal with, so I got to get some studying in before I go to bed. So, but I do appreciate each and every one of you for joining the panel and giving your insights and for your questions, and of course all of those who joined and is still rocking with us these 4 hours later. I don't know if the same folks that were at the beginning are still here, but A lot of you have rocked with us the whole 4 hours, and so we appreciate each and every one of you, and of course your questions and comments. I'm not sure I was able to get to every one of them, but at least once a month I like to have these so I can see what's on the mind of the people, and just be in community dialogue. And so that's what this MBONGI is about. And so with that said, I will let each of you in with a comment. And so I'm going to start with Lionel, then I'm going to go to Inya Sarah, and then to Brother Odara, and then to Brother Makua, and we'll end it there. So go ahead, Lionel.
This closing statement.
Yeah, just a closing statement.
I just like to say, it's always a good thing being on your show, man. Hey, man, I want to on like some real stuff, man. Hey, I want to try to get in the Amin Ra squad, man.
All right. We'll see. Because we haven't even met in, I don't know, along. We still all saying talk. You have to remember that each one of us were doing something different even before coming together as the Amin Ra squad. So we usually come together when there's a big threat. So it's like the Avengers. So when the world of pseudo is coming in strong, then the Amin Ra squad will convene, and then we'll hit the streets and try to defeat some large pseudo claim or whatnot, and then we all separate back into what we were doing individually. So
put me in any type of initiation process, man. Give me some books to read, man. I want to be a part of it, man.
Well, we definitely got some foundational books, so we'll definitely talk offline. And so I do appreciate your presence here and for your commentary and questions. So, Brother Sarah and Sare.
Peace. I just want to thank everybody on the panel. I'm glad I caught this. I'm glad I catch most of your videos, because it touches on those things that that greater hunger that you speak about. When a lot of other YouTube channels and videos, you kind of talk about a whole lot of carnal things, a whole lot of physical things, and so working on the things that I'm working on right now. For myself and for the youth, it definitely seems like it. I didn't even, matter of fact, I think I just had my phone in my hand, and I didn't even know you were going live. I don't even know how it happened. I accidentally clicked it, and I saw it was live, and I never got on the panel with you. I usually would be on Ujau's thing or something like that, but a lot of people that you have on, I've never heard of, but when I hear them speak and I hear the place that they speak from, it just it really is inspiring, and it makes me just want to just take notes, because again it's touching on everything that I'm working on right now in my life personally. So I'm glad that the ancestors helped all of this happen, and to the brother who gave me his email in the chat, I appreciate that connection as well. I'm not sure how much it costs to talk to people in South Africa. I guess we'll figure that out, email or Zoom or whatever it is. But again, just thank you, and thank everybody on the panel and everybody in the chat as well. Peace.
Peace. Dr. Odara.
Peace, brother Asa. Peace, everybody on and everybody on the panel. I mean, thank you for support this channel. Everybody on the chat, everybody who's watching right now live, and everybody who will be watching on the archive. You know the importance of support works like that. This good content which we need in the YouTube streets. So thank you everybody for supporting this work, and keep doing it, brother Asa. Keep doing your good work. Happy birthday again for your another round in the sun. Good luck and good job Everything you need, we are here.
Appreciate it. And again, we're going to talk with Dr. Odara on the 22nd. It's going to be a Sunday. I forgot what time it is. I have to set it up. But I think y'all are like an hour or two ahead of East Coast time.
Yeah, just an hour.
Just an hour, yeah. So the details will be coming soon. So he's live from Brazil right now. So this will be an international and global conversation. So make sure that y'all mark your calendars for August the 22nd. All righty, appreciate you. And pronounce your first name again. I'm gonna try to get this for the end of the night.
It's Katelopili.
Katalopeli.
Yes, yes. Yes. Thank you very much to everybody who came through. I happened to catch you late. Since your show starts in the early hours of the morning in South Africa, in Johannesburg. But I think I will regularly wake up around that time and catch you again because it's for the second time now. But I follow your work. Most of the time, I take my time and download all of your videos. I cannot say all of them, but the recent ones. I go through them, and they are so much liberating. And I hope everybody can hold hands with everyone in the diaspora to do the great work that you're doing. And not only Asa, but other folks over there, please hold hands together and raise the standard and liberate us at home here because the mist is very dense this side. The enemy is on top of us and we can't breathe as you you happen to not breathe in the United States. And I think you're breathing much easier than us here because we sometimes oppressed by our own. Our liberation will come from you over there because you're so much very close to resources and keep those resources working for liberating your homeland, for liberating your land of origin, because we're looking at you in the diaspora that you can easily liberate us in the continent here because you see things better and you are more free than us because we cannot speak as much as we want. We don't have that freedom of speech. We have a little of it, and you having at least maybe a maximum of it over there. We're having a minimum of it here because we get limited by how we ask for resources. We get limited by resources because you're afraid to speak certain things because you're looking for some favors from somewhere in a politically connected somebody, and there are certain things that you cannot speak of. There are certain things that you cannot do freely because you're still looking for some favors, except that you cannot put bread on the table. Yeah, your work will liberate us indeed because the resources you have there are more resourceful than our resources this side. This is the rich continent, but the wealth here is quite misdirected. And with your work over there, as and others, we will reach that stage where we will breathe better. And thank you again for the great work you do there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The honor is all mine, and this goes to each and every one of you. And it is commentary like this which helps to fuel and help me to continue to do this ancestral work. So I appreciate each and every one of you for joining the panel. Again, thank every one of you who are listening live. And of course, if you are listening to the archive and you just happen to be listening to all 4 hours of this conversation, I'd like to thank you, for holding it down as well. So, until next time, and I should be announcing another interview, a professor out of Ghana, but who lives in Japan. So we're trying to coordinate the times right now because he lives in Japan. And so it will be definitely an interesting conversation that we're going to have. So I met him some years ago at the Sheikh Anta Diop conference. And so he has a very interesting story that I'm pretty sure each and every one of you would be interested in hearing. So with that said, I am going to bounce, get something to eat, and then start my studies so I can be dangerous in these intellectual streets.
Peace and blessings.
I'm sorry. Oh, I thought I heard someone say.
It's a
All right.
peace.
Peace, everyone. Good night.